I have the slides here. I have the slides here. Finals. You have opened the folder file. Finals. Share screen. Okay. Okay, let me test using one of them. Julia, can you hurry the final teams to arrive here? It seems only few teams arrive. Sorry, Julia. In the finals folder, is this the sequence? Number 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay, but how to determine when will you do the ChatGPT drawing of loss? Okay, I want to do a roll call of on-site teams. Team Chinese Taipei. Team Chinese Taipei, thank you. Team Indonesia, thank you. Malaysia, thank you. Russia, thank you. Singapore is online. Spain, thank you. Thailand is online. UAE, thank you. UK, all here. Okay, on-site teams already. Online teams also ready. Switch on what? Sorry. The camera is this one. Testing, no. Testing, 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 testing. Okay? All right. It's not my control.
Recording in progress.
Okay, we are choosing the order now. The screen is not sharing. The screen is not sharing. You can share the screen. Okay, now we will do the ordering of the presentation. Please watch. Is everyone ready? Yeah. Okay. Okay, please stay here, Julia. Julia, can you continue to share that screen, please? I need the order. Please continue share that ChatGPT screen. Are you? Thank you, Julia. Okay, done. You can stop sharing screen, Julia. Okay, the IEO business case final will start soon. Julia, are you ready? Okay. 唔可以攞紙筆寫住先啊？筆咗個位。
maybe yes。
係啊，因為比較係啊。
唔係得我一個喎，個個都要喎。
個個都要，個個筆寫住。
係啊。即係筆唔係。
哦，佢哋有筆，大家有筆係咪？
我都有筆，大家有筆，我俾啲紙你。
Thank you，thank you。如果唔夠呢度好多批紙。
開咗咪嚟㗎？
就咁打開就開講得嘢㗎。
OK。呢一支咪。
你想仲有？Okay, everyone's ready? YouTube live stream is working? YouTube is working? Okay, good. Okay, first of all, can we give a big round of applause to our honorable judges? Okay, Team UAE, the floor is yours. Please come up on stage. Control here. Once you start, the timer will start. Just control left, right. Control left, right. Okay.
Greetings, judges and colleagues. We are Team UAE, and today we will be presenting our solution for the Hong Kong housing crisis. Your Emirati consultants are Neve,
Niraj,
Eva Strays,
and Fatma.
moving on to our executive summary. We believe in a long-term, multifaceted approach in solving Hong Kong's housing crisis. Firstly, we analyzed the current market analysis, which will be getting into the bottlenecks with the housing crisis. Then we moved on to a current policy evaluation, followed by other measures considered, and then we suggested our proposed solution framework with a financial and risk mitigation, as we believe in mitigating risks before they even arise. The current state of the Hong Kong housing market was identified through discussing the recent activities, current trends, and market outlook and secular trends. Now, some of the main factors or main macroeconomic events that we discussed was high demand despite slowdown in market, and wait times for public housing exceeding 6 years by the South China Morning Post and the CBRE. And we believe that there's a growing trend towards smaller housing units, which is why we believe that there's a massive solution needed in terms of fixing the Hong Kong housing market. Now, we also looked at the percentage of land, as understanding Hong Kong's geographical situation is extremely important in understanding how the housing market can be solved. We believe that the main issue with the Hong Kong housing market is unresponsive public sector rents. Now, public sector rent caps affect the price of increases of rent. And now, while in general incomes have risen, and because of that rents in general do rise as well, this has not been the case for public housing market. And as you can see here, there's a price cap, which means that the quantity supplied is much less than the equilibrium quantity needed in the market. Now, this puts an upward pressure, an increased demand with inelastic supply on the private sector housing, which means that an increase in demand, as you can see, leads to an extravagant rise in prices and not that much increase in quantity supplied.
Next, we will look at supply constraints and demand factors that have contributed to the current state in Hong Kong. Regulations like plot ratios and land policies make it so that private firms have it very costly to make new buildings. Moreover, fixed public rental housing rents make it so that private housing is simply not an option because it's just not profitable to do so. In regards to demand factors, Hong Kong's demand for its houses are rising as inward migration increases. Moreover, as mentioned, demand far outstrips supply in the public rental housing market, which has led to what we see today. In the last decade, prices have risen over 200%, with the median income now being 20.7% the average housing price. The average waiting time for public rental housing is also over 6 years now.
The Northern Metropolis. It's a planning area that can house 900,000 homes and of use of previously unoccupied land. The Light Public Housing is a scheme to build 30,000 temporary homes to reduce the wait time for permanent public housing. Land Sharing Pilot Scheme is a private-public partnership where land tenders at discount rate of 70 to 30% for public and private. Public flats at 65% market price.
Now that we've gone over some of the already proposed projects, we'll be going over countries that experience the same problem and how they dealt with it. First of all, we have Japan that also had a housing crisis back in the 1980s. They solved it by, well, investing to housing. And Singapore, often cited as a similar country to Hong Kong, solved it by establishing a new department that focuses solely on providing affordable housing. Finally, Netherlands is experiencing a similar problem, and they're still dealing with it, but they have been doing as well since they've been subsidizing the construction companies that went bankrupt since COVID-19. And before we begin going over the solutions, here are a few solutions that we didn't choose to accept them because we deemed them infeasible. So, the first one was enforcing a law for minimum houses built. Companies sometimes build less houses than they actually can to artificially raise the prices. We wanted to put a law for minimum houses, however, this may deter companies from investing to Hong Kong, so we rejected the idea. Land reclamation was also an idea, however, the initial costs are higher than they are now, which may actually lead to even higher house prices. Finally, cutting down parks is just against the laws and their morals, so we have put the idea aside.
Now we'll move on to our first solution, which is a public-private partnership between the government and private sectors. The main aim of this policy is to improve the land sharing pilot scheme and make it so that the cons are minimized. As you can see here, the process works as lower tender prices and contractors bid. There's private funding and operation, and there's an 80-20 split between public rental housing and private housing. After investment and profits are returned to the firm with a discount rate applied, the ownership is transferred to the public for the public rental houses, while, as shown on the key stakeholder side, the contractors keep 20% of the private homes as their incentive. As you can see, if this process, as we will show, is feasible, it benefits all key stakeholders, as the government has a lower opportunity cost in producing the public rental homes that are now produced by the private sector.
Moving on to the next proposed solution framework, which involves using the home ownership scheme adopted from Singapore. As Eva mentioned, Singapore has solved its housing crisis through the home ownership scheme, which essentially subsidizes the buying of houses for individuals or families, but then it allows the natural forces of demand and supply to navigate the prices in the long run. And we believe this is the correct long-run strategy. Now, currently, Hong Kong's home ownership discount rate is around 38%. We plan to bring that down to 30%, increase the number of beneficiaries, and utilize savings from additional corporate tax that we'll talk about in the next slides, which will lead to additional tax revenue, which can help the target audience of individuals earning up to 33,000 Hong Kong dollars to be a part of this home ownership scheme. As you can see on the top right, the home ownership schemes offered flats have been minimal in the previous years, and we plan to increase that to 10,114, which will bring a massive advantage to the Hong Kong housing crisis.
Now we're going to move on to our financial analysis for our two solutions. Firstly, we want to show you the data that we use for this. We obtained this data from the Hong Kong Housing Authority, as well as local engineering authorities and journals. And we use lines of best fits as well as bullish, bearish, and expected calculations. Here you can see a payback model. We assume that firms are the most important stakeholder in this process. And the reason for that is that the governments have lower opportunity cost. And so if it is feasible for firms, the governments will certainly be benefited. And lower income households have more homes available to them and lower waiting times. So the most important factor is to ensure the feasibility for private firms. And as you can see, the break-even point is 15.625 years, after which firms will retain control for another 15 years to earn an expected profit that is viable in the real estate industry. We then did an NPV and IRR analysis of the project. And as you can see here, the IRR for this project is 10%, which is well within the bounds of 8 to 12 for projects with a similar risk. Now, firms are incentivized to partake in this project because of the lower risk. There will always be demand for public rental housing, and firms can capitalize on that.
Moving on to the financial analysis based on the tax revenues that we discussed. Essentially, for big cities and financial capitals like Hong Kong, we used a tax elasticity of 0.4. According to many cited research reports, the elasticity moves from 0.3 to 0.5, so we took the median value. As you can see here through the Laffer curve model, we analyzed that there will be an increase of 7.57 billion Hong Kong dollars when you increase the corporate tax rate from 16.5 to 18%, which will bring in increased tax revenue that can be used to fund the home ownership scheme previously discussed. And we have our derivations here, which involved a bit of calculus that found the maximum revenue and the derivation for the increased tax revenue based on the Laffer curve model. Now we moved on to a risk mitigation using financial analysis. We built a payoff matrix, we built a probability impact matrix which looked at different risks and how we can mitigate them. Essentially, the biggest risk that we feel could defer our plans is a high probability and high impact on financial viability of developers, which we'll discuss its mitigation here, where, as you can see, here's our matrix, and here are some of the risks and the mitigation kind of strategies that we have. But essentially, for the financial viability of developers, we want to conduct thorough financial and background checks of developers.
Finally, the two solutions we have decided in the end is public-private partnerships with private contractors and the increased taxes in various sectors in order to subsidize public housing. Thank you.
Just finish? Good. Okay, thank you. And time is just up. So it's come to the Q&A section. Maybe I ask the first question first. If you were the Hong Kong government, would you prefer those capable Hong Kong people to buy a property for own use, regardless of whether it is a private properties or home ownership scheme property?
We believe that home ownership is a virtue. However, it's a long shift and it'll take a long time to make that change. Currently, most of Hong Kong 40% of Hong Kong live in public rental housing. And we aim to increase the ownership figure through our home ownership scheme, but it does take time. Singapore, which is often compared to Hong Kong, is not typically a perfect substitute because of the fact that they have so many people owning their homes rather than renting, which is prevalent in Hong Kong.
We must also capitalize on Hong Kong's beauty as a cultural center using its many parks, and we cannot use those parks for immediate transformation for public sector homes, which is why we've kept that and used these economic solutions instead through subsidies to maintain both the mental health index that is really important in today's world.
Okay, maybe I will ask the second question. Have you considered the stakeholders of the house crisis, and what would be the impact your solution or recommendations brought to these stakeholders? Thank you.
Right, I can answer that question. So we have considered stakeholders as consumers, people living in the housing market, developers, companies who develop it, as well as the government. And one more factor that we discussed was maintenance companies and all these companies that rely on the housing market. Now, essentially, all of our solutions are there to have the best sort of benefit for all of these mentioned stakeholders. For consumers, through the home ownership scheme, it will be much more cheaper for them to buy. Through the public-private partnership, we've seen that private contractors are now incentivized to actually engage in private sector and public sector houses, which is why as our financial analysis explored, much more homes, and more homes will give maintenance companies much more contracts, will increase their demand as mentioned. And we also believe that the main stakeholder here are consumers, and their affordability will be solved.
I would like to ask more about the suggestion about expanding the housing ownership scheme. May I know what will be the actual action, like building more housing ownership scheme or another solution?
Right. So just moving to our slide here, we aim to decrease the discount rate from 38% to 30%, which means that we can use the budget for more number of people. Now, it's 8% decrease in beneficiaries, and the additional tax revenue that we'll receive will allow us to reach approximately 5,000 more homes, 5,067 more flats annually. So that's 50,000 homes plus in 10 years, and our mathematics helps us kind of discuss these projections.
Do you think that it will create a disincentive effect among the citizens, that more people will choose the housing ownership scheme and then the waiting time will be longer?
So we actually took a two-pronged approach to this scenario. So by doing a public-private ownership scheme, we ensure that those who cannot buy homes can rent homes at affordable rates. And moreover, through the home ownership scheme, we actually reduce the demand for public rental housing, because those who can't afford it would rather own their homes than rent it, and through the rent-to-buy program, they will be able to do so. So the upward pressure on demand for public rental housing decreases while the supply increases through the public-private partnership. And in doing so, all stakeholders benefit.
Also, additionally, before there's around like 260,000 plus applications for the home ownership scheme. So the demand, as Neve mentioned, will go down through our public-private partnership, which is why we suggested a two-solution framework.
Hi, hello. I have one question. That is, I think right now you know that our interest rate is on a rising trend. So did your solution take into account of the possible change in the market situation? So maybe the private flat is the price is going down, then the home ownership scheme flat is no longer attractive, right? So how do you cater to such a situation?
Regarding the interest rates, well, because we want to slightly change the fiscal policy by increasing taxes in other sectors, we want to compensate by not really increasing or changing the interest rates, and instead focusing on subsidizing thanks to the tax revenue collected from the new fiscal policy. In fact, we're hoping that this project does not affect the current deficit and does not worsen it, hopefully improves it as citizens become happy in their new housing. And well, that hope answers your question.
Additionally, we also use and cited investment banking reports which mention that now is not the time for Hong Kong to slow down despite its current account deficit of 100 billion, which is why we believe we must continue with our strategies, and through increasing the corporate tax rate by 1.5%, we can fund a lot more homes through the home ownership scheme.
May I have the next question? Your team suggests that this explaining the home ownership scheme, but any suggestion that you will take in to increase the supply of land?
We consider that as one of our solutions through the scrapping of public parks, but we don't believe that's a current good strategy for Hong Kong, given the high amount of density, which leads to a higher amount of pollution. And so by trying to increase the amount of land that is available for residential development, we're inadvertently reducing the amount of greenery and nature present in Hong Kong, which will lead to a worse pollution and environmental standing in Hong Kong. Rather, we seek to benefit and change the plan for the northern metropolis, which is seeking to expand the development for land. And we see that the main issue with the northern metropolis is that there is no guarantee of a spectrum of households from low income to high income being provided. So we believe that we shouldn't increase the amount of land that we're using for households, as that's already being done through the northern metropolis, but rather we're focusing on making sure that the distribution of homes in Hong Kong is equitable for all people in the society.
If you were the government, would you try to stabilize the property price over the years? Because if the property price fluctuate a lot, in particular the downturn, the people will not be happy.
Yeah, so we consider speculative investments, which is the reason why many markets around the world, and especially the housing market, has been fluctuating. But the Hong Kong government has already implemented schemes, and we also suggested an at least 5 years ownership under the home ownership scheme, which reduces the amount of speculative investments. So speculative investments in the Hong Kong market essentially has when people just buy properties and keep selling them, and then that fluctuates market prices. But we are suggesting, along with our proposed solution framework of 5 years ownership, which reduces the price fluctuation in the market.
Thank you very much, and I think our questions are already finished. So wish you good luck, and thank you very much for the brilliant presentation.
Thank you.
Team Thailand, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Hi, we can hear you.
Team Thailand. 我哋要俾分先。我同你試緊聲嘅。得。
We'll let you know when we can.
Team Thailand, can you try to control the screen yourself? Just try.
Okay, let me try right now.
Can I ask a question regarding how the judges will ask us the questions?
Oh, that was probably answered in the chat already. So
my bad.
If the jury
Yeah,
asks,
Q&A will-
if the jury asks any question, you will hear just like you are hearing me now.
Is this the movement right here?
The screen is working well.
Yes.
You have controlled the screen. Again, Team Thailand, can you hear me?
Hi, it's quite echoey. Would there be a better source of microphone?
Okay, Team Thailand, the floor is yours.
Hi, just checking. Are we audible?
Like this?
Hi, are we audible? Hello?
I was told not to do so because it will block the slide. It will block the slide. It's okay? You sure?
Can you hear us? Hello, can you hear us?
Hello?
Team Thailand, can you minimize yourself to show just one face? Team Thailand, please show just one face.
I think they can hear us. We should start.
Okay.
Okay, like this, just show one face. Okay, Team Thailand, if you are ready, please start.
Good afternoon, we are Team Thailand, and today we are presenting a business case to solve the housing crisis in Hong Kong, Housing for Hong Kong, an accountable solution. Executive summary then. With the theme of the housing crisis, Team Thailand aims to create a self-sustaining model to alleviate the impacts of the housing crisis on middle and low-income groups. And this group of people in Hong Kong suffer the most from the main problem today, the problem of property inflation. Our solution to this problem is to create a self-sustaining property inflation accountability system which will clear the waiting shortlist and create a permanent structure for meeting affordable housing demand. So as introduced, the main problem that we'll be tackling today is the disproportionate effect of the housing crisis on the middle and low income segments in Hong Kong. Because of the crisis, the group of people experienced the following two harms. Firstly, long waiting lines for public housing, sometimes up to 5 years. And secondly, a severe shortage of affordable homes because of the lack of comparative profit in the sector. And all of the harms of the housing crisis essentially boil down to one root cause, and that is property inflation. The disproportionate effect can be seen in the graph right here. Property price index increases at a faster rate than GDP per capita income, and much faster than compared to low middle income. And this means that despite the housing market growing, we think that inequality and K-shaped growth causes the middle low income's purchasing power to stay comparatively lower, which alienates them further from the inflating housing market in the future. So what causes property inflation and consequently the harms which are market failures here? We think that the root cause of property inflation are gentrification, inequality, and excess demand. And these are from the stakeholder groups of the commercial sector, luxury sector, foreign demand, and speculative market. So given these groups of people who cause market failure, our approach is to create a self-sustaining property inflation accountability system where those who cause property inflation need to be accountable to solving market failure, which has harmed the middle and low income segment, as we see right now in Hong Kong. And as you'll see in our presentation, this is going to be done in a financially self-sustaining long-term solution and a solution that makes no compromises on economic health.
Onto strategy case study analysis. Analyzing the Hong Kong market reveals 3 key weaknesses. 1, poor zoning laws. 2, redundant housing entities. And 3, low property taxes. Home prices relative to income are significantly higher than the global average. More concerningly, over 2,300,000 people are on the waiting list for public housing, and over 200,000 are living in informal housing. This number becomes more concerning as the new demand for public housing is 20,000 units per year, but only 1,500 are constructed, creating a yearly deficit of 5,000 units and an indefinite waiting list. Onto our solution of self-sustaining property inflation accountability system, 2 parts. The first part is our financial sector, where we make it attainable by finding where we get our money and what we want to spend on it. And the real sector is where we make all of our ambitions a reality. Finally, on mortgage accessibility, our key idea is that mortgage interest directly affects a customer's purchasing power. For example, a mortgage interest increases 1%, purchasing power decreases by 8%. To address this, we propose 2 main solutions. First is soft loan and mortgage insurance. Offering soft loan offers 0% interest for the first 3 years, helping borrowers with limited savings to qualify for home loans. Mortgage interest is a 20% insurance policy that reduces lenders' risk, encouraging more mortgage approvals. And secondly is securitization. By grouping mortgages with similar characteristics into a group, we can attract more investors than a single mortgage loan could. This frees up capital, allows the government to issue more loans, increasing customer spending and investment.
Moving on to taxation and funding. This is where we get our money to fund all of our projects. Our aim in this area is to have the government tax the accountable groups and redistribute it to fix market failure and reduce deadweight loss. In this way, we create a long-term self-funding system. We have 4 tax sources as seen on the presentation, and we will be doing 2 main tax plans. First, upfront tax and annual property tax, and second is capital gains tax. A feature here is we will adjust the tax rate based on the economic situation, like Singapore has done. If we need to stimulate the economy, we can decrease the tax rate. If we don't, we could hike them up. Another part is public-private partnership. Apart from the demand side, we also have to focus on the supply side. The reason why affordable housing is in shortage is due to its low profit margin and very high land cost. To deal with the issue, we should encourage firms to build more affordable houses by subsidizing and giving tax exemption. In exchange, the government will cap the price at 2.8 million Hong Kong dollars for a 36 square meter apartment. We expect to build 45,000 houses per year for the first 10 years to clear out the large amount of backlog. and build 20,000 houses after that period to meet the yearly demand.
Now, onto the real sector. From our research, zoning in Hong Kong is outdated. It hasn't changed for 20 years. Most of the land is forest and only 7% is zoned for residential housing. So, to increase land availability and for affordable housing, we need to repurpose underutilized or poorly developed areas, free the land on the city's outskirts, and increase the FAR to reduce the cost of the land and incentivize land use for affordable homes. Next, one of the biggest problems of construction is bureaucracy and dealing with lots of authorities. That's why we need to consolidate the small and fragile housing agency in Hong Kong to be the one-stop service for affordable housing to reduce the bureaucracy and increase efficiency. And next, we want to create innovation to reduce costs in order to make affordable homes both better and cheaper. Firstly, we have new construction tech, and second, standardization. This will reduce costs and maintain the quality of affordable homes. Meanwhile, our third solution is applying eco-friendly, such as renewable energy. On top of the reduced cost, it will also attract international sponsors.
Next up, we look at financing. The slide overviews the cash flow for the first 10 years. We propose generating funds through commercial, luxury, foreign capital gains, and a second home tax. Key assumptions include an average yearly wage of approximately 240,000 Hong Kong dollars, a price cap of 2.8 million, a livable house size of 36 square meters, and a production cost of 5.472 million Hong Kong dollars for such a house. To achieve our plan, we recommend public-private partnerships amounting to 52.4 billion, mortgage insurance of 1.2 billion, and soft loans totaling 13.3 billion Hong Kong dollars per year. Altogether, these recommendations involve a cash flow of 66.9 billion Hong Kong dollars per year for the first 10 years, ensuring affordability and sustainability in the housing market. Moving on to the cost breakdown, to enact our policies, there are three main expenses. PPP expense, we must subsidize the difference between the price cap and the estimated cost of construction, which is currently at 5.472 million Hong Kong dollars. But after our cost-saving measures, that can be expected to be reduced to 3.774 million Hong Kong dollars. Secondly, mortgage insurance. We calculate the total by assuming a deficit rate of 16%. From that, we will be expected to cover 1.2 billion Hong Kong dollars in expected defaults per year. Thirdly, soft loans, we will need to subsidize around 200,000 Hong Kong dollars of interest per loan per year, giving us a total of 13.3 billion Hong Kong dollars per year. For the first 10 years, we may use government leverage to fund these increased costs. Together, these measures will ensure the effective implementation of our policies. Moving on, this slide outlines the impact and timeline of our 15-year plan. In the financial sector, we have three initiatives: the PPP, soft loans, and mortgage insurance. These are aimed at supporting housing development and affordability. In the real sector, we focus on new zoning, one-stop service, and construction tech. These initiatives will streamline processes and promote innovative construction methods. Our timeline spans 5, 10, 15 years and beyond. Within the first 5 years, we aim to build 45,000 units of housing annually, clear a 250,000 units backlog in 10 years, and meet yearly housing demands of 20,000 units. This will be supported by financial backing and newly built housing and continuous zoning updates. Overall, our impact will result in sustainable long-term housing structures addressing both immediate and future housing needs.
In conclusion, Team Thailand's solution is to create a self-sustaining property inflation accountability system. And in doing so, we fix market failures effectively and significantly alleviate the housing crisis in Hong Kong in the span of 10 years. This is truly an accountable solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thailand team. You are very punctual. Let's start the Q&A section now. Let me ask the first question. In your cash flow model, maybe you can move back to the cash flow model.
And I guess just a side note before the Q&A section, the first part of the presentation, there was a lag time in the movement of the presentation. But basically we spent a little bit like this master slide over here with our plan. It got delayed, so this is essentially our 6 solutions right here, and the information there as like a master sort of executive summary in a case, detailed, holistic view over a model.
Okay, can you hear me, Thailand team? Thailand team, can you hear me? Okay, Thailand team, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, it's a little bit echoey though.
Yeah, sorry. Technical issue. We will start our Q&A time. First, can you move back to the slide for the cash flow model? I noticed that you have three solutions. One is private-public partnership. The second is soft loan, and the third one is the mortgage insurance. Regarding the private-public partnerships, I think the government would be in a rather reactive manner, because in order for you to get fundraised by this initiative, the private sector need to be profitable before they can agree to join these initiatives. So are you sure that you can achieve that 78.3% according to your plan? What is the major hurdles for you to achieve this?
I'm sorry.
Did we hear?
Can you repeat the main part? It's very echoey.
It's very echoey.
Okay.
Would it be possible for you to come up to the computer and speak into the mic directly? Would that be possible? Because right now with the speakers, it's just all echoey all around.
Oh, okay. I try again. Can you hear me now? Are you
It's
okay?
still quite echoey. Sorry.
It's very echoey.
Can you type in the question?
Is it okay now?
No, it's still echoey. Sorry. Would another microphone source be possible? I'm so sorry about this.
Another technical issue. Huh? Okay.
Yes,
Much
thank
better,
you.
much better.
Yeah, much
We're
better.
so sorry for the trouble. Right. So that is definitely a topic that needs to be discussed. So here, when in the slide we say the current cost of it to construct a 32 square meter flat or condo or apartment is around 5.472 million Hong Kong dollars. This is taken from the market price, so this already includes the markup for the companies. So in providing these contracts or these partnerships with the private sector, the markup is already provided to them, and how the contract would work would be a bidding system. So certainly we have taken into account the profitability of the private sector, and that is reflected here in the slide with the current costs taken from the current housing prices. But we did mention that we can cut these costs from our real sector development, mainly zoning, by increasing FAR so that they can build higher, taller buildings, and also new technology, construction technology, like precasting or standardization, which can provide economies of scale?
So just in terms of the public-private partnership idea in general, the main purpose of it in the financial sector is really just basically to meet the supply and demand. So have enough supply and control the supply's price. So what we'll do is, incentivize private sector firms to go into affordable housing through, as we explained, tax exempt subsidizations, and as we calculated in that cost. But in exchange, these particular firms will need to set a house cap at 2.8 million for it to be affordable. So that control of subsidizing, cost of production for affordable houses and setting a house cap will make the demand of, affordable houses really realized. And the real sector over here is how we sort of create this affordable housing scheme in which through each of the models, it basically cuts the cost even more, and that we factored it into our calculation there, removing a particular percent of the cost, assuming that we invest in this real sector and do get the efficiency from city zoning, one-stop service, and new technology.
Yes.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. All right, I'll probably take the first question. Maybe Singto, you take the second. Okay, so for taxation, our central model is to fix this property inflation. So in terms of the two types of taxes that we're going to impose, upfront tax, annual property tax, and capital gains tax, it's only going to be the tax is only going to be revolved around buying basically the real estate sector and what drives up property inflation. So we gave you three things at the start: gentrification in terms of building luxury buildings or building commercial sectors or expanding the financial district in Hong Kong, and that resulting in land prices increase all throughout the area. We talked about speculative gains and the foreign demand from mainland China, and we talked about the inequality that's growing. Right? So essentially here, our model is for people who contribute to property inflation. So these four stakeholders right here that we talked about, we're going to impose upfront tax and annual property tax and capital gains tax specifically in the area of the real estate market in order to fund this whole thing and in order to solve the market failures. And in terms of maybe if you ask the social consequences of it, we think that yes, like taxation, there will be a little bit of pushback from these individuals, but we think that this policy is crucial to closing the gap of inequality, right? These four particular stakeholders, they've benefited from the government quite a lot. We think that if you look at the graph in the beginning of property price index versus GDP per capita in the low middle income, it's growing and growing, right? We think we need to take a bite of the bullet and a trade-off needs to be made. But in the long run, actually, we think that these stakeholders actually benefit due to economic development. We think that this whole scheme is a big fiscal policy, and in developing this real estate market, which is a leading sector of the economy, we really get this multiplier effect of up to 2.9 times, looking at historically the Thai data. So we think that through that's going to actually benefit these companies even more. But on the point about capital gains tax, we'd just like to clarify that it's not capital gains tax in every single area. It's just going to be the capital gains tax that is, so the capital gains that is made in the real estate market, which drives property prices specifically. Yeah.
Right. So the second question about the expanding residential areas to forest areas. First, I would like to clarify in our real sector plan. For city zoning, we have three main aspects, right? Expanding to existing areas, reconstruction, and the third part, which was of your concern, being the forest area. I would like to point out that in our plan, actually, the part on the forest area is quite minor compared to the other parts. Our intention in this, for this strategy, is if you inspect the Hong Kong zoning maps, the areas which are forests, and with reality, there are a lot of areas where these areas zoned for forests are there are actually no forests. So those are the lands that we deem that we are able to develop into residential areas, and it's more of a the thinking is more on updating Hong Kong's zoning map. As we have said, Hong Kong has not had an update in zoning for almost 20 years, actually more than 20 years. So that's the main thinking behind expanding these areas to the forest zoned areas. Does that answer your question?
And maybe to give, yeah, so maybe one quick thing about an illustration for this city zoning and regulation. Aiming is just to create more land for affordable housing. Let's look at FAR in particular. So FAR is floor area ratio. Essentially, we're gonna try to incentivize as much people as possible in order to actually use the land to create property prices, affordable housing. I'm sorry. So FAR, we're gonna maybe times 1.5 or times two to it to make affordable housing able to build 20 floors versus luxury able to build 10 floors, and that's going to incentivize basically.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? No.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
你要 hold 住佢先，我哋俾緊分。
Hello. Yes. It's working right now. Yeah. Okay.
Everyone ready? Oh, please wait. The jury is counting the marks. You can test your screen and try to say something. Test the sound.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Testing.
Mic test. Mic test. Mic test. Mic test. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We'll be starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Imagine a single bed encased in metal bars in a space no larger than one parking space. Here, your neighbor lies right above you, and 20 others share one filthy toilet. For the 200,000 Hong Kongers who live in cage homes, this is their everyday reality. But no fear, my friends, for Team Singapore is here. We'll be covering the problem accompanied by a stakeholder analysis pertaining to our 3 areas of focus, before answering the key question with our 4 solutions leading to 3 crucial impacts. Let's dive straight into the problem. Hong Kong property prices are the highest in the world, a result of high demand and low supply. Demand from housing arises from both necessity and investment. At the same time, supply is low due to limited land, zoning restrictions, and high vacancy rates. Together, high demand and low supply cause the average home price to be 18 times annual household income. Next challenge, long waiting times for public housing. The graph here shows an increasing trend of waiting times, and last year, the average waiting time for public rental housing was 5.8 years. All this means a significant shortage of affordable housing. But what does it actually mean for our stakeholders? Well, home seekers have a strong interest in affordable quality housing, but are also the most powerless. The other half of the population, homeowners, have no interest in affordable housing. High rents and prices benefit them, and houses constitute the majority of their net worth. The most powerful stakeholder, the government, is interested in making housing affordable, but also has a vested interest in selling land at high prices. As for developers, they're profit-maximizing oligopolists who have little interest in affordable housing and pressure the government to keep property prices high.
Currently, policies are grouped under 3 areas, namely targeting land supply, increasing public housing, and financial incentives plus subsidies. Let's start with land housing. First up, we have the land sale program. While it contributes to government revenue, costs incurred from aggressive bidding are passed on to buyers, resulting in higher property prices. This also takes away land that could have been used for PRH or HOS schemes. Next, the Lantau Tomorrow vision aims to increase public housing supply by 200,000 units through land reclamation. However, its extremely high cost has been met with strong opposition. It is currently postponed. Now, let's look at public housing. The PRH scheme provides 850,000 units and serves 2.1 million residents. But placing low-income households together leads to social segregation and can depress nearby property values. The HOS scheme supports 1.5 million residents in home ownership, but the average flat cost of $4 million remains out of reach for low-income households. Lastly, financial incentives and subsidies. The RRS offers tax deductions that offset high rental costs. However, gaining access to these schemes is rather unintuitive, and monitoring legitimate lease agreements can be challenging. Lowered mortgage terms, such as reducing down payment and interest rates, makes home more accessible but lead to higher default rates when individuals buy properties above their means. To conclude, the government faces a conflict of interest, resulting in policies that are only mildly effective, with certain room for improvement.
Next, we examine 3 cities similar to Hong Kong. Singapore for land scarcity, London for high property prices and inequity, and Vancouver for high urban density. Singapore's 3-pronged public housing strategy uses high-density vertical developments, housing grants to ensure inexpensive public flats, and includes green building initiatives with the National Parks Board. Hong Kong can adopt these policies to maximize land use, integrate green spaces, and provide effective solutions. Singapore's next solution involves land reclamation and public-private partnerships. Over 130 square kilometers of land has been successfully reclaimed by Singapore to develop new areas of housing through PPPs. With over 100,000 people in the waiting list for rental homes, we believe that efficiency that the private sector brings is exactly what the Hong Kong housing market needs right now. This way, housing projects can be delivered both on a large scale and fast. Next, the King's Cross development in London exemplifies inclusionary zoning by designating units for lower income groups, integrating them with affordable housing with market rate units, and investing in community infrastructure. However, a key difference we must note is that London has abundant land, while Hong Kong faces a massive scarcity, which can slow down construction and drive up prices. Finally, Vancouver's empty homes tax imposes penalties on vacant properties, incentivizing rental and generating around 115 million Canadian dollars for affordable housing initiatives by the government. However, the marginal effect may set in. Vacant houses in Hong Kong are mostly owned by investors who prioritize the flexibility of selling anytime for speculative returns over contractual rental income, and thus this solution is not recommended for Hong Kong.
Next up, we'll bring you through all the possible solutions and their respective pros and cons. Starting off with the short-term ones. Firstly, we identify a market-based approach to lower housing prices. However, this may seem straightforward, but at a time when it's already falling demand in a highly inelastic market, this solution is likely ineffective. Secondly, equity-focused policies, namely increasing tax credits, subsidized loans, and direct subsidies. Whilst these can cause higher budgetary strains, they can serve to complement existing measures to allow homeownership to be more affordable and for select private housing and public housing to be lower costs. Indeed, our model shows that for the average individual, such policies can greatly reduce his mortgage and tax payments, easing their burdens. Last but certainly not least, temporary settlements to address the housing issues with immediacy. Our team digresses the conventional PRF model to present an innovative solution, container vessel housing. Firstly, our solutions are expected to be fast and cheap. Secondly, these vessels are very flexible and versatile, allowing housing on land and on oceans. In terms of durability, we think that despite being meant for shorter periods, our vessels can easily last over 10 years. Recognizing the limited land space and rising sea levels, our designs allow for these houses to possibly exist on a barge on water. Considering weather and legislation, we shortlisted a few possible locations as shown. Right now, these figures are the figures for the public rental flats in terms of production and cost. As you can see, a single unit right now costs over $1 million to produce. Next, our suggestions. We reference our industry leader, Eaton, to estimate our per vessel costs to be $75,000. Considering the additional cost of land and barges, at base case, for every one traditional PRF, we can afford to produce 7.5 vessels. Indeed, in all three cases, Bear, Base, and Boo, we will increase the number of units provided at no additional cost. Under the base case, we are looking to increase production by nearly 40,000 units in the next 4 years, which will cut the waiting time by 2/3.
Finally, we cover the long-term supply-side policies. Firstly, land development is achieved through repurposing underutilized land, such as the large amounts of undeveloped government land parcels, as well as abandoned infrastructure that can be converted to housing at relatively low cost. Military land, while large, is deemed unsuitable due to the potential political infeasibility. We believe there is also potential in developing Hong Kong's rural areas and mountainous regions, due to the vast amount of land compared to the city centre. However, to address concerns of inaccessibility, this policy must be supported with projects to enhance transportation links. When developing mountainous areas, hazard assessment and mitigation must also be carried out to reduce landslide risk. Furthermore, with our proposed integration of green spaces addressing environmental needs, legislative change is possible to allow for development in previously protected areas. Based on our calculations, we will see a subsequent 8.67% increase in housing stock. Next, we propose land reclamation to increase land supply. Land used for non-essential purposes, such as golf courses, can be reclaimed by the government and redirected to meet housing needs after the lease expires. Another possible solution is land reclamation from Hong Kong's surrounding waters. However, such a policy is significantly more expensive than developing existing land. Thus, when we acknowledge the importance due to the limits of existing land development, we believe that this is only feasible in the long run if the government is able to reduce its large budget deficit and address possible environmental concerns. Moving on to measures targeted specifically towards public housing. Public-private partnerships in public housing development, expanding on the current pilot scheme, are key to reducing the government's financial burden and increasing quality, efficiency, and innovation. Next, the government should increase public housing height to optimize space while employing construction techniques like 3D printing to reduce construction time and increase cost effectiveness. We also suggest master plan towns featuring residential areas integrated with commercial and recreational facilities, smart technologies, and green space. This ensures efficient land use while improving sustainability and quality of living. Through analyzing historical records, these are the estimated developmental costs for a successful district with proper facilities. This cost will be spread out in the long term, and hence we believe that such an investment is worthwhile given the numerous benefits.
Affordable housing is a basic human right. Our integrated plan combines short and long-term solutions to ensure that each and every Hong Konger can afford housing, enjoy high quality of life, and live in a stable society. Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions from the judges.
Thank you very much, Singapore team. We need to start the Q&A section now. Okay, let me ask the first question. Now, a lot of properties were bought by investor instead of the one who really occupied the. Do you think Hong Kong government needs to impose heavier restriction on those investment behavior so that the property price
Thank you very much for your question, sir. So regarding this, we actually did a lot of research before deciding on solutions. And what we found was that Hong Kong actually had property cooling measures specifically targeted towards people who wanted to invest in the housing market in Hong Kong. So these are not people who actually need the houses to live in, but for example, mainland Chinese or other foreigners who want to buy these properties to invest in. So this is actually quite a huge market for the Hong Kong housing market, and a lot of the people buying properties, especially the more high-end properties, are investors trying to turn a profit on these properties. So what the Hong Kong government did, as we found out, was that they actually had property cooling measures such as additional buyer's stamp duty, which means that for every additional house that you purchase, if you're a foreigner, the amount of tax that you have to pay is higher. So this solution did prove effective, because what we saw was that housing prices in Hong Kong actually declined this year as compared to previous years. So because the demand for housing subsided due to these property cooling measures, what the Hong Kong government did in March 2024 this year was actually they scrapped these property cooling measures and basically scrapped the tax on buying properties for investment. So we see that, as we explained in the demand slide, what we see is that taxes are a possible solution, but at this status quo, where the demand is not that high, we think that taxes are not needed because the demand for housing in Hong Kong has been on the decline.
Hi, hello, Singapore.
Thank you very much.
Your plan is comprehensive and very organized. And
Hello, sir. To answer your question, as we mentioned earlier, we did delve into the possibility of applying demand-side policies, such as raising our interest rates, as well as the relative charges, fees, etc. Right now, we do not see these as necessary because there's already a declining demand in the market. However, like you mentioned just now, it is definitely prone to change. When we expect there to be a change in the market and the prices really shoot up significantly, we definitely wish to adopt suitable measures. Namely, we will adopt measures like adding on to the additional buyer stamp duty, as well as increasing interest rates for non-eligible buyers. Of course, we recognize the fact that this must be balanced with the equity distribution of housing. Therefore, when we impose these measures, we will use the funding from these measures to provide additional subsidies for families that actually need to buy these houses, such as first-time home buyers under the public housing schemes. Any other?
Another thing that we actually noted was that the demand elasticity, the demand in the Hong Kong market for housing is actually highly price inelastic. And so we know that price changes would not significantly affect quantity demanded, and hence we would need more robust and flexible policies over more superficial and extrinsic policies such as taxes and other financial disincentives.
Hello. Can you hear me? Oh, sorry. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can.
Okay. Hello, Singapore team. Yeah. I also appreciate your PowerPoint, very comprehensive, but your tone, your pace a bit fast. Can you explain more about the housing being built on in the ocean that side, and then can you explain why you think that can improve the situation? Also, do there any successful cases in the world that you can support your idea?
Hello, sir. Thank you for that question. So I will start off by explaining a bit on what we really meant when we said the housing developed on these oceans. Namely, we meant that, okay, so first of all, we meant that we wish to produce these things known as container homes. These homes are going to be developed using these container vessel-like structures, and they'll be able to be developed for very cheaply. As we mentioned earlier, with our current analysis through one of the market leaders, known as one of the market leaders, Etone, we expect our per vessel cost to be only 75,000 Hong Kong dollars. This is greatly contradicted with the current high prices for public rental flats production. Therefore, we think that by using these container homes, we're able to quickly ramp up production in order to satisfy the increasing need for these public rental flats and to lift people out of their cage homes. Why we choose to put them on the ocean is because right now Hong Kong is facing a significant housing shortage, and we find it difficult to find a location to really put these people with proper public access, whether it's public transport or utilities, etc. Therefore, we believe that it's good for us to leverage on existing public transport and public utilities and put them at already developed areas, such as the ones we mentioned here, like Kowloon Bay. These areas we have developed, we have identified, have already a lot of actually these barges built there, basically a lot of ships, large ships and barges. So our idea here is to produce these user vessels and to put them on the barges so that they can reside here. My teammate will elaborate.
Just to add on, I think the other part of your question, sir, was on which countries have actually developed floating communities for people to live on. So actually one of the biggest examples are European countries such as the Netherlands and Norway. So they have actually like implemented very successful floating communities where it literally is a self-functioning community by itself. So people just live on the water. And it's not actually only limited to European countries. It's also happening in French Polynesia, Maldives, Britain, France. So actually all of these measures have been proven to be effective. And yeah, we think that bringing it to Hong Kong will greatly help alleviate the short-term housing situation in the sense that people who are waiting for public housing can live in these floating communities for a few years, a few months before they get their public housing. And sorry about the case, we wanted it to be as comprehensive as possible.
If I were to add on one more thing, on the topic of container homes, Hong Kong actually has previously piloted such schemes as shown on the right over here. So we believe that we can leverage previous statistics and research to really build into what we want to develop now. Yeah, thank you.
Can you hear me? Hello, Team Singapore. Can you hear me now? Okay. I would like to ask more about the floating communities suggestion because I saw you guys have chosen Kowloon Bay and Tseung Kwan O as the suggestion. But besides the climate risk problem, Kowloon Bay is kind of the place that you have chosen is kind of a luxury housing place in Hong Kong now. Do you afraid that it will create some society problem if you try to build a floating communities there? And also for Tseung Kwan O, I believe that there should be a bridge and some infrastructure implementing in that area. So do you think that it will create some other problems if you choose to build the floating communities there?
So thank you for your question. So regarding the location, sorry, it's very echoey. Yeah, so regarding locations of Kowloon Bay and Tseung Kwan O, what we propose is actually floating homes on barges. So the thing about barges is it's very flexible. So for example, if there's an event at Kowloon Bay that requires the marine space, what you can do is simply move the barges to somewhere else for a month or two. As for the Tseung Kwan O, what we found was that even though there is a bridge there, the harbour inside is actually very suitable for floating barges. And in fact, we found a news article that actually proposed Tseung Kwan O as a possible venue for floating communities. So we think that these two solutions are the most likely to house floating communities because they are close to the central area and also because they are sheltered by the coast and harbours that they are part of.
Thank you, sir. If I were to expand on what my teammate had just said, basically, our rough idea is the fact that because they are on barges, they're actually very flexible. We don't mean that we're gonna completely shift these communities away from their existing location. Of course, that wouldn't be. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share.
Thank you very much, Team Singapore. Thank you very much. Team Thailand, the last team, they had some technical issue during the Q&A, and their time was cut short a little bit. Would Mr. Choi, would you like to go back to the question you wanted to ask Thailand? Team Thailand, do you want to answer Mr. Choi's question that was supposed to be asked?
Yes, if the jury has any questions, I think we'll be ready to answer them.
Okay, Team Thailand, I will give you back the screen, and Mr. Choi will ask the remaining question that was supposed to be asked. Team Thailand, please.
Hi, so sorry about the situation. All right, it's still echoing. We thought that the technical difficulties meant that our Q&A section was cut short.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Okay, it's nice to see you all again.
Wait a minute. Let us just go to our Q&A section real quick on the computer screen.
And yes, we can hear you very clear.
Okay, it's nice to see you all again. My question is that one of your slides has said that Hong Kong has a low property tax rate, is 50%. I want to ask that, so you suggest is the rate is low, so how will you do about the tax rate, and then how, after your solution, your suggestion, it can improve the situation?
Yeah, we can go here.
All right, we're ready.
Can you hear?
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear, yes.
Have a low property tax rate, is about 15%. So any suggestion that you want to do with the tax rate, and then after your suggestion, how can better the situation? Thank you.
Right, so the 15% tax rate is on rental income. So there's no, from what we've researched, there's no annual tax, the assessment of the property. So what we would like to do, with our model of self-sustaining property inflation accountability, we would like to increase taxes on those who are accountable in creating the market failure or creating this property inflation, in order to help out those who are most affected by this problem, which are low and middle income people. And we have four main target demographics in which we plan to increase taxes on, which are people who speculate in the market, those who cause gentrification, so luxury housing or some commercial buildings, and these, and in general, just people who are the most accountable. So these are the people we would like to increase the taxes on.
And essentially here, after increasing, that tax, upfront tax, annual property tax, and capital gains tax, that's where we go into the self-sustaining part of our accountability system. So this taxation funding increased by over here from those who cause property inflation allows us to spend in all the other 5 areas to solve property inflation and solve the housing crisis.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Team Thailand, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, so we're leaving soon, right?
Wait, just to clear. Sorry about this, but the question was only 1 minute 30. I assume that it would carry on for maybe 5 minutes, but if this is not the case, then okay. Well, we're just thinking about, we got cut off.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for this.
Okay, I think we can start the next.
Okay, Team Malaysia, please be ready.
Record.
Julia. Julia, the Zoom on my computer stopped. Oh, so no more Zoom from now?
Test. All right. Esteemed government officials of Hong Kong, I'd like to ask you a very simple question. How big is the space you use to park your car? 5 meters? 4 meters? Well, the typical size of a car park in Hong Kong, metropolitan Hong Kong, is 3.5 meters. My teammate Evan, standing at 1.77 meters tall, will take up more than half the length of a usual car park space when lying prone. Can you imagine yourself sitting in this tiny car park? Or can you imagine yourself living your entire life in the space of this tiny car park now that I've given you Evan's dimensions? Unfortunately, this is a stark reality of many Hong Kong citizens today, living through the city's housing crisis, living in subdivided flats, in coffin homes, with their basic human right to shelter eroded to the highest degree. My dear audience, Team Malaysia is proposing a two-pronged policy solution to alleviate the housing crisis and provide the citizens of Hong Kong with the dignity of adequate living conditions. We'll be addressing two main causes that we've identified. First being inefficiency in existing public policy initiatives to address the housing crisis. The second being private sector speculation and investment driving up property prices. And to do this, we are focusing and advocating for institutional reform of the current land auction system, as well as providing economic incentives to stakeholders involved in the housing market to push it in a more equitable direction. We're also identified specific major significant risk factors to our proposal, and we will cover how we will intend to mitigate them later in our presentation. For now, I will pass on market analysis to Tosin.
Now, onto the market analysis. In the past, the HKSR government has implemented a multitude of initiatives in an attempt to alleviate the housing crisis in Hong Kong. They all aim to address the issues by either increasing the supply of homes or by assisting people in obtaining public housing. However, they all have one thing in common. That is, they are inadequate, they are insufficient to solve our housing crisis. For example, take a look at Landhouse Tomorrow Vision, which comes at too high a cost financially and environmentally, while the other initiatives struggle to meet the housing needs of Hong Kong residents. From excessive waiting times to displacing residents and SMEs, these initiatives are inadequate to solve Hong Kong's housing crisis. Next slide, please. In addition, the housing market in Hong Kong is extremely overpriced because all the land in Hong Kong is owned by the government. It is leased out to private contractors and auctioned off to the highest bidders. Therefore, the aggressive bids by private entities, including foreign investors, caused land prices in Hong Kong to skyrocket. In fact, many of the wealthy investors of Hong Kong real estate are actually from mainland China. They account for roughly 31% of transaction value of property in Hong Kong after the removal of stamp duties in 2024. This in turn drives speculation, which causes price increases in property, which leads to the further exacerbation of the housing crisis.
Thank you. Although Hong Kong does take pride in having the most free market society in the world and its identity in the market economy, one of the most important stakeholders involved in this economic decision is the Hong Kong people. One notable and unique type of housing takes the form of subdivided units in Hong Kong, where people live in coffin homes worse than the living standards of those who are in prison. As they cannot afford typical housing, they will have to afford these types of subdivided homes which are smaller than a typical Hong Kong parking space. With billionaires flocking here to invest, locals still struggle to afford basic needs and necessities to cover their basic living. This impacts not only their living standards, but their social standing as well, with many Hong Kong adults, 61% in fact, having mental health issues due to living in these inadequate housing conditions. Most monetarily of all, affordability is one of the most important factors when considering Hong Kong housing. In other countries, you may be able to work for 3 years and afford a nice suburban house, or maybe even 5 years for a nice larger mansion. In Hong Kong, working for 17 whole years won't get you a castle on the hill, but will only get you an apartment 1/8 the size of the classrooms you were in just now. Next slide, please. And therefore, Team Malaysia proposes an initiative to tackle the pricing caused by overbidding in the auction processes. Using a simultaneous multi-round auction, this ensures that the effect of speculation is removed from the market completely due to all auctions being simultaneous, and information will be perfect in the market. This will encourage efficient allocation of land because all firms bidding in this process will have to efficiently analyze and research their bids before placing them, instead of just placing random bids and driving up housing prices. This requirement for analysis forces equilibrium to lower prices, and therefore this reduction in land acquisition costs will then further reflect in the reduction of rent prices for Hong Kong people. Thank you.
To ensure the land of Hong Kong is obtained from the parties that really concerned about the Hong Kong's development rather than their profits, the Hong Kong government should think of to find a land developer that actually implement the ESG. So the land developer who are interested, they will have to submit an ESG commitment proposal to the Hong Kong government, and the developer who has the most comprehensive and realistic proposal will get the land sale. Okay, so as you can see in these graphs, the blue line shows the net balance we expected it to reduce in the next 20 years in Hong Kong. And the red line shows the ESG factors we expected it to increase in the next 20 years. This is because in our policy, we concern ESG more rather than the bidding price. And as the bottom part shows, the estimated revenue Hong Kong dollar in the best case is 1.226 trillion Hong Kong dollars in the next 20 years. So you might think of why we can get so much of revenue although the net balance is reducing. So I'm going to explain it in the next issue. Okay, so the second issue, the first one, is the implementation of vacancy tax. A vacancy tax is actually the tax we charges to those property owners who has the property but they did not use it. So this tax can help to reduce the vacant properties and also deter the property investors. And for example, Canada has used the empty homes tax in 2017, and they did it quite successfully. And as shown in the table there, this is the tax that we suggested for the implementation of vacancy tax for the different periods of homes vacant. And the graph here shows that the cumulative vacancy tax revenue predictions in the next 20 years. And the second one is the capital gain tax, means that the tax that we impose when we sell the assets. This tax can help to deter short-term property investors. And for example, New Zealand has used the bright line tax in 2015. And this is also the tax that we suggested according to the different year of purchase. And this is the graph for the cumulative capital gains tax revenue in the next 20 years. So to make sure that the people compliance with the tax, we can also use nudge theory, like using the social norms. We can send them the reminders like 9 out of the 10 citizens have paid their taxes. So most of the citizens will pay their tax to follow the suits. So that's all for me.
When an economic policy is implemented, risk will be faced. Therefore, it is imperative to de-risk resistance, especially from investors. In our risk matrix, we have identified that there may be pushback from both investors and property owners over bottom line concerns. To mitigate such risk and maintain Hong Kong's reputation as a financial hub, we have built in our implementation strategy to engage with the public over concerns and feedback, publish the auction bids in a transparent system, perform on-site inspections yearly to ensure that land developers who have been awarded the land leases have meet their ESG requirements, and more importantly, to have a pilot program in place before national implementation. We must emphasize to the public that despite these regulatory policy mechanisms, this is a compromise that the Hong Kong government must do to protect the well-being of its citizens. Real estate should be prioritized and utilized for meeting the city's residential needs. So in conclude, our policy initiative is a two-fold thing. So our two actions, an innovation revamp over our auction system and fiscal policy mechanisms, are feasible as they involve modifying incentive structures and are therefore much more cheaper and easier to implement as opposed to expensive supply-side policy. To summarize, our policy will lower housing costs.
Time is up. It's already 10 minutes, so I have to stop you. Shall we start the Q&A section now?
Sure.
Okay, good. Let me ask the first question. I'm a bit unclear about the auction system. How does it different from the current auction system that that this new auction system will be beneficial to the Hong Kong people?
Okay, I can explain this. So this particular type of auction is called a simultaneous multi-round auction and is derived from economics in auction theory. The way that the traditional auction system works in Hong Kong for the land leases is that all bidders submit their bids anonymously and the highest bid is the one that's awarded the contract. For this, it's designed in a very specific way that all properties are sold at once so that it spreads out the competition and it doesn't focus on insane high bids. And these rounds, and in summary, it's supposed to, the whole objective of this thing is to make the bidding increments less. So ultimately, our concern is that with high bids, that will reflect in highly costly construction costs, which will be borne onto the consumer. So this system, by implementing these specific rules, will control it and keep it at a very efficient rate and that reflects the true market value.
Okay, maybe I will ask the second question. First, I have to admit this is really a bold and innovative proposal. But my question's about the feasibility, especially when it comes to the ESG commitment proposal you mentioned. So it seems that this proposal is very critical during the auction, right? And in the risk analysis, you also mentioned about the risk. Can you go to the next few slides, the risk analysis with the matrix? Yes, here. So you also mentioned about the risk of the greenwashing by the firms to overstate the ESG. But I know that there are a lot of studies working on how to evaluate the ESG report, but this is about what you have mentioned about the on-site inspections is to verify. I think it's more related to what have happened in the ESG report. But now you are talking about the ESG commitment proposal, which means it's something in the future. So how can you to perform the on-site inspections to verify something in the future?
All right, so I'll answer your question. For ESGs, we actually do want to have ESGs as one of the main important factors in the auction process in the first place, because currently auction is based off of the highest bidder. But if you would go back to the previous slide. We would like to find a correct ratio between ESG and the bidding price. When firms submit their bids, we will force them to have an ESG case study for which they will have to, one, adhere to a set requirements that we have been given to them, and two, they have to advertise themselves past the set requirements such that they become, such that they incentivize the government to work with them. So they will have to have some sort of attractiveness in that sense.
And to also clarify our rationale for why we want to integrate this ESG proposal is that we know that there may be some public opposition as opposed to overbuilding new houses or new housing, and over concerns that it will cause environmental degradation. With the ESG requirements, we hope to mitigate this loss or at least help substitute it in that sense.
Yes, may I ask a question about your proposal on charging two new tax, charging tax, right? The vacancy tax as well as the capital gain tax. I am a bit worried that if you charge a new tax, the investor will not come to invest and will further reduce the supply of private flats.
Okay, I do understand that one of the main identities of Hong Kong is that it is a free market economy, but we have evaluated in our cost analysis that after comparing certain economies that are similar to that of Hong Kong, like Singapore, and comparing other economies which have performed these implementations before, we have calculated it such that the taxes do seem quite viable to be implemented. And we have researched that in Hong Kong, only about 2.7% of income is through commercial investment in real estate.
And once more I can add again, we want to, ultimately our main goal with the taxes is to give additional priority to prioritize and utilize more real estate towards Hong Kong residences. And however, we're not banning home ownership for these direct foreign investors with the tax. We're merely limiting it to a sense. So if they still want to buy it, they'll just have to pay the additional premium.
Hi, I can see you have put a lot of effort on the supply side, but you've mentioned that some family household income has exceeded the requirement of applying for public housing, but they still cannot afford private housing. But then you didn't really give a solution on how to bridge the gap.
Because we are planning to aim more on the base root cause of the issue, for which it is the auction, the current auction system, we plan to tackle it in such a way where when you auction, the prices don't skyrocket as high. And so when you have that, those types of low land acquisition rates, it will reflect on the consumer less. And also, additionally, we have taxes as well. By implementing those taxes, especially for vacancy, which can be implemented within the next fiscal year itself, vacancy can immediately generate taxation income, for which we have predicted 1.226 trillion of Hong Kong dollars to be generated within now and the next 20 years.
And for this particular types of income, Granted, we did this system because it's a more feasible approach rather than spending a lot of money on the problem. But now since that if in our best case scenario we do achieve these revenue results, we can use it to help give transfer payments, for example, to those in needs, for example, in those coffin homes. Whether we can give them a direct transfer payment so they can use to upgrade and make their homes more livable in that sense. But ultimately, our main proposal is to solve the problem at its systemic and its effects in the long term. And we hope that Hong Kong can see those effects.
To add on, the tax revenue collected from the vacancy tax and the capital gains tax can be used to subsidize more more housing to improve the current infrastructure, providing housing to those who cannot afford it.
I would like to ask more about the vacancy tax. Because there was a proposal about the vacancy tax in Hong Kong before, but the Hong Kong government has rejected to implement it. So if you were the consultant, how will you persuade the government to accept your proposal? Because the government has rejected it once already.
From what we've understood based on previous research on the vacancy tax in Hong Kong, we've seen that vacancy tax, the last time it was implemented, I believe, was in around 2015. And I would personally say, and we have analyzed that the economy has changed quite a lot since then, where people have changed in terms of societal norms, where they may choose to live in other countries instead of in Hong Kong. So vacancy tax has been implemented, especially in our country as well, in Malaysia and in Canada ever so recently, and with the current societal norms, it seems to have been acceptable.
In terms of your forecast, how did you factor in the potential population change and also the demographic changes?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
I mean, if when you foresee the demand and supply in the near future, you need to think about the population change and also the demographical change. Have you ever considered these two factors?
In terms of, we've considered two factors here, which is inflation and population change. With population change, we have looked at the Hong Kong Census and Statistics Department, and we have found out that within the next 20 years, the department has predicted a negative 0.5% decrease in population and a 2.5% increase in inflation. So we have added those values, and then we have calculated the real value down there.
Thank you, and time is up. Thank you very much for your effort and the presentation. Thank you. Good luck.
Okay, Team Indonesia, please stand by.
Resolving housing crisis in Hong Kong. Good evening, everyone. We are from Team Indonesia. My name is Karen, and they are Nathan, Nazla, Andrew, and Gilbert. Today, we as government consultants are trying to address the issue about housing crisis in Hong Kong. Next slide, please. So this is our executive summary. Our main objective is to solve the current problems that cause the housing crisis in Hong Kong and contribute to the SDG while ensuring that our project is financially viable. But the key question is, how can Hong Kong government develop and implement a comprehensive policy by 2049 to raise the overall being of their citizens and also resolve the persisting housing crisis that has been plaguing the country? Okay, first, let's talk about the problem. The root cause of housing crisis in Hong Kong was because of the limited supply. However, if you look at the data, 75% of Hong Kong land is still undeveloped. And this raises a question about why Hong Kong government does not build more houses in those undeveloped lands in order to fulfill the demands. The answer is because Hong Kong government is really rely on investors or land sales. If you look at data, 25% of Hong Kong government primary income comes from land premium, where the government sell their lands through land auctions, and the highest bid will win, and the government will get the revenue from it. So this means that Hong Kong government is actually face a trade-off between increasing revenue from land sales or increasing their citizen well-being by building a home in their undeveloped land.
So when we talk about the housing crisis happening in Hong Kong, we will have to talk about the residential gap that has been happening over the past few while. Now, we can see it from the demand side and the supply side. First of all, the demand in housing in Hong Kong has been rising due to the investors and billionaires that come from mainly the high proportion income of the population. And the real estate itself has been solely seen as an investment opportunity, as it is seen as a high risk and high return investment tool. And moreover, a more excessively accessible loan only worsens the problem as it amplifies demand and raises price even more. And meanwhile, on the supply side, there is a lack of progress in increasing the supply of subsidized housing within the average Hong Konger to be able to afford, since they depend mostly on them. Moreover, the stagnating real income from the middle class of an average Hong Konger, this means that with the increasing house prices, more and more people are unable to afford mortgages and they get rejected by conventional banks simply because they are unable to afford them. Next slide, please. We can further analyze the housing bubble in Hong Kong through the price dynamics curve, because again, we mentioned earlier that the increase in demand is because of the investors that invest further into the real estate market, and this increase in price will amplify their confidence to more and more invest their funds into the real estate market and raises price even more. And this increased investor demand, this means that the property developers, they targeted their housing projects more towards this group of people. This means that little capital is allocated towards the group where the average Hong Konger is able to afford. So we as a government, we need to settle for a solution that not only resolves the housing crisis occurring in Hong Kong, but at the same time maintaining its profitability and sustainability for the economy for the long run, so that that the government do not have to deviate to other opportunity benefits, such as simply auctioning the land off to private entities.
To address the conquering housing problem, Hong Kong's government has already had some plans. The first one is by reclamation. However, this faces many contrasts. The first one is due to its high cost to the government's budget, and then the second one is because it raises questions about the concerns towards the sustainability towards the environment. Is it sustainable because it could damage the marine life? And then the second one is transitional housing. This is not quite solutive for the long term, because people could only live there for 2 until 3 years, and then after that they have to move out and find their own house. If they still cannot afford their own houses, this creates a new cycle where people would again live in the cage house. Next slide. And therefore, we suggest this development plan towards the government in Kutong, where this would not only consist of residential areas, but also tourist destination and public services. We could elaborate more on why we choose Kutong as the area on the appendix later. And from this project, this could benefit all the parties. The first one is for the government. This could generate, the tourist destination could generate additional revenue for the government, and from this revenue, the government could subsidize the flats there. And from this could maintain competitive housing prices, while on top of all of that, it could fulfill housing demands for those in need in affordable prices. Next slide. Okay. And why we include tourism in our development plan? Because tourism could generate revenue for more than $1 billion to government's revenue annually. And besides, this tourist destination would also stimulate local business, and then this local business would create more job vacancies, which would in turn increasing people's income in Kutong, and all of this would foster economic growth in Kutong itself and in Hong Kong as a whole.
All right, so here's the capital structure to fund Kutong Housing District. So 60% of fund will come from commercial banks in the form of debt, while the rest 40% will be in the form of equity from the Hong Kong government. So based on our research and analysis on the cost of debt and the cost of equity, we have calculated that the weighted average cost of capital for our project is at around 7.29%. Next slide, please. And this is the cost revenue analysis of our project. We can see that the operating cost initially rises substantially before it finally stabilizes and start to grow at a more steady rate. For the revenue projection, it follows a similar trend where it rises substantially until it reaches its full occupancy, and then it will grow steadily afterwards. And keep in mind that every financial projection on our project are adjusted to Hong Kong inflation of 2.5% annually. Our initial investment will be 37 billion Hong Kong dollars. Most of it will go to construction, and again, this will be funded through the capital structure we stated earlier. And the main revenue for our project will come from the apartment rents themselves and theme park. And this shows how having an additional attraction to our district can drive even more revenue so that we can push the apartment rent prices even more. Next. Right, so based on our financial projection, we have a net present value which is in fact positive at 4.6 billion Hong Kong dollars and an IRR of 8.46%, which is higher by more than 1% than the weighted average cost of capital. We will break even in 12 and a half years with discounted payback period of 21 years. Again, all the financial projection, assumptions, models, cost revenue analysis are available in the appendix, and we will be more than happy to elaborate even more if you wish to do so.
Okay, so next we will move to how our housing development projects could switch the ESG analysis. The first is environmental. So we aim to reduce the carbon emission up to 8,362.5 metric tons CO2 annually with the implement of the green roofs and also solar panels. For the society itself, we will aim to improve quality of life, community development, and also social inclusion to lower to middle income publics. And for our analysis, this construction could facilitate more than 10% in initial and up to 30 to 40% of publics to move from the coffin house. Next, for the government, is to enhance the government reputations, property values, and also attraction of eco-conscious stakeholders. Next. Then there are some challenges that could impact of our project itself, and we have the plans to mitigate it. The first one is the construction delay. We aim to develop a detailed project schedule with clear milestones and deadlines. The second one is the inadequate rent collecting, which will establish a strict and fair policy for late payments. The third one is a natural disaster. In here, we will have an emergency precautions and also insurance to cover that. And the fourth one, for the overrun cost, we will create a conservative estimation about the cost and prepare more liquid assets in it. Next. And what is our implementation of our plans? We divided into 3 phases. The first one is the planning phases between 2024 to 2025. In here, we will estimate the cost of our construction and also capital structure. Next is the construction phase between 2025 to 2029. In here, we will build the apartment, public service, theme park, and also the green space. And the last one is the operating authority, which will be held from 2026 to 2049.
Sorry, time's up. But do you want to continue your presentation and less Q&A section time?
Okay, to conclude, so based on financial calculation where the NPV is positive and the internal rate return is profitable, we optimize that for the development of Kutung as a place for affordable price and maintain profitability so the government can fully invest to our project. And I think that's all from Team Indonesia. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Let's start the Q&A section. And you have started the call already, right? Okay. My first question is, I don't quite clear about the Kuntong area that you are going to develop. Is that on the hillside or what?
So here is the planning of our territory that we're planning to develop. So this is the main site that we're trying to build here. It's just above a little bit northwest of the Kutong region. And why do we Kutong, yeah. And why do we precisely select this location as our development project? Well, because first of all, Kutong is a strategic location that is close to Shenzhen, which is the technological hub of China. So meanwhile, there is already an agricultural community settled nearby the area. So from there is already an established demand where there are workers who work in Shenzhen that can relocate to the Kutong area and create affordable housing and purchase affordable housing there. And moreover, within the Hong Kong region itself, why we pick Kutong is because it aligns with the government's plans to develop the Northern Kutong project. And one of them is through the MTR construction, the MTR station throughout the northern link that is planned to be fully operational by 2027. And this is necessary because so that when we build our housing in Kutong, when it's fully realized by 2029, we already have an accessible transportation to the rest of Hong Kong's economy. And moreover, the topography chosen to develop the district is mainly still subjugated flat, so that we can save considerable costs in repurposing of land by the government. Thank you.
Is this solution short-term, medium-term, or long-term? Do you have really sufficient areas in Kutong for you to develop?
So actually for our plan is for 25 years, have we mentioned before, is from 2024 to 2049. And we also have calculate our project's cost in here. So our cost functions, we are gonna have the construction first in the 2024 to 2026 as our land improvement cost and also the construction cost itself. And these projects will continue to 2049, which in here we will conclude a positive NPV at the end. And these projects is also aimed to coverage about 70,000 of the public's community that live in coffin house to move to these apartments.
Is the land flat or the area you're going to develop also cover the hills or I mean, is the construction really take a lot of effort and time and cost?
So actually for all the cost of constructions is only take about 30 billions. And this cost function is not really big because we have calculated payback periods for 13 years, and these payback periods also have an ERR or 8%, which is higher than WACC's. And these projects also could have faster discounted payback periods more than like usual projects, rather than like subsidies by the government, which is not only not solving the solution right now, but is worsening because there is more people living in the coffin house and not afford the flats. So we could see, like we have mentioned a few alternatives before, like transitional housings and also reclamations, but it's unfeasible, as we say, because this has high initial investments, and also for the transitional housings, it's only for short periods. So we have a long-term analysis. Thank you.
Thank you for your recommendation, but I believe that you may know that Kutong project is quite controversial in Hong Kong since 2005, I think, because the government has tried to develop Kutong North since 2005, but the project has been delayed until now. There are few major difficulties that the government are encountering, like the local people living in Kutong, and also the biological diversity problem, and also the transportation problem. So, what's your solution of the above difficulties? Like the first one, the local. There are many protests of the local that they try to stay there and do not willing to move out. So what if it caused the project to be delayed and then the cost will be increased?
Okay, so to address the problems in Kutong in the first place, first of all, the fact that the space that we're trying to develop our land, when first of all we've made sure that it is not owned by anyone but the government for us to develop, is that first of all the land is still for now is undeveloped. It is a subjugated flat, so that we can fully utilize it to increase the prosperity of Hong Kong people as a whole. And moreover, we understand that there are many controversies and many implications that may happen throughout Kutong's project, and how it has been historically been a failure and it's been delayed a lot. So this is why we've been thinking about the project in the long term by creating facilities, creating a theme park as a form to create a sustainable economy, so that the project can fully be realized and profitable in the long run, not only for the Hong Kong people as a whole, but also for the local Kutong people. Because one of our plans here is to create a theme park, and one of our advantages is because we are aiming to stimulate the local business within the Kutong region, and for us to create new job vacancies and increase the people's income. So from what we're trying to achieve here is we aim to create a region where Kutong can be a powerhouse within the new territories region of Hong Kong.
Yeah, a question for you. The government has already announced that they will have this project. There is the Northern Metropolitan Area. So your team just suggests the same thing as the government. So anything on top of the government suggestion that your team can be given to us?
So, as we become consultants of the government, what we're trying to do here is we can mature the plan that the government has settled. Our role here is to support the government's plans to improve the Kutong's area. And what are we trying to do here? The fact that we're aiming to build facilities and theme parks, that's what we've mentioned earlier, is we realize that what we can do here is to fully support the government's efforts to fully realize the aims that the government trying to achieve to minimize the amount of people living in cage homes. And the best thing that we can do here is by supporting the government through creating facilities that can support the whole program.
Sorry, I would like to add some more. And as Nathan said before, like this project has already been planned by the government itself, and we also Okay, so we also aim this project is not only for short term, as we say, as the government has not released this project yet. We are aiming for the long term, and in here we are planning these projects is for 2049, and we will we as a consultant could calculates the cost within the minimized cost to generate the best outcome for government itself. And we as the consultants have found that the operational property could be fastened, and this could have a quite good strength on the NPV returns and also the ERR itself.
Thank you.
Okay, one question for me. You said you like to introduce a theme park in Kutong area.
Correct.
That this may lead to competition with the existing theme park in Hong Kong, right? Just like Ocean Park or Disney, and it may affect their business as well, right? And also another point that is it may create land use conflict, right, among the residential and the theme park, right? both of them need the land to build, right? And also the resident living nearby may suffer maybe the influence from the tourists that visit to the area. So how can you solve the conflict between the residents and the tourists? Just like in Japan, I think especially in Kyoto, because there are too many tourists that affect the residents' life there. The local residents cannot take the bus. So how can you cater to such a possible situation? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. What we're trying to achieve, first of all, your question is about the competition. And well, when we talk about our development in Kutong, we're not trying to specifically compete with Disneyland and other regions in Hong Kong because, well, it is located all the way south on Hong Kong's region. Meanwhile, our development project in Kutong is all the way up north. So in terms of competition, we're just trying to reach the new market within the the new territories region of Hong Kong, because we're not trying to touch tourists on the international or national level, but simply create a regional tourist spot for people all around the new territories region to be able to visit it and increase their quality of life through recreation. And moreover, when we talk about the
excuse me, I need to stop you because a little bit overrun already. So, but I think you have addressed part of his question. And then thank you very much for your contribution and
thank you so much.
dedication of this presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Team Spain, please be prepared.
Probando. Hello. Ok, vale, así. Hi. Vale, así como en círculo, perfecto. Perfecto. ¿Empiezo ya? No, tienes que esperar que...
So please wait. Yeah.
One of the most important problems in Hong Kong is the price of buying a house. Dear jury, we are Team Spain. We are Eduardo Ampudia, Alejandro Cid, Sebastián Escobar, Alejandro Verdejo, and myself, Miguel Cubel, and we are going to talk about how government policies could mitigate this problem.
This project have two main opportunities that are the assistance of many countries with the same problem and solutions and also the possibility of using public resources for our solution. Our main objectives are making public housing in Hong Kong affordable and preserving Hong Kong natural and cultural heritage.
So the solution we propose for Hong Kong's government is for it to reclaim 5 square kilometers of land by creating and then draining a polder, and then it would use that land to create over 6,000 50-story buildings, enough to create 370,000 homes to house over 1 million people. A significant increase in supply to alleviate the problem.
So, what's the current problem at Hong Kong? It is very clear. Nowadays, Hong Kong is the world's most expensive city to live in. Its price per square meter is by far the highest in the whole world, and there's also a problem of land scarcity due to government restrictions. So 75% of its area is protected.
This problem comes from many years ago, when the government started building landscapes, and they leased public land through auction, where companies of construction paid huge amount and raised the price to have profits. That's one of the original causes.
With this approach, the government isn't favoring our main target, which is public housing demand. Public housing demand currently in Hong Kong constitutes to about 45% of the total housing offer. But this isn't enough. Why isn't it enough? Because the government is promoting new initiatives to increase this supply, which are obviously then covered by the demand. There are two main initiatives that we have found. The first one, which is light public housing, that involves modular construction that lowers the construction time by a significant amount. And the second one is just boosting production by about 150,000 new houses on the next 5 years. Now, by comparing these three measures, we have reached the conclusion that the recommendations that we make the government must raise the offer both in short and long term, and also raise the living standards and raise the affordability of housing in Hong Kong.
And what about the approach and the methodology? As the government is who is going to carry out this project, profits, economic benefits are not our main priority. We want to improve the standards of living of Hong Kong citizens, and we want to do it respecting the cultural and natural heritage. Moreover, we will make more house affordable.
In order to achieve a solution for Hong Kong's problem, we've been influenced by other countries' cases, like for example the Netherlands, whose 26% of its area is below the sea level, and they've been establishing a polder systems since 12th century.
The second example that we have found is in Spain, where residential satellite cities offer affordable housing to a main city nearby, which is connected via metro, via highways, to facilitate pendular movements in the same day to families and workers in both of the cities.
The third example we encourage Hong Kong's government to adopt is Singapore's model for urbanization, which has been very successful at keeping prices low. As in Hong Kong, Singapore owns all land. However, in Singapore makes contracts for private companies to fully develop residential districts with residential buildings and services. When it's done, it's property of the Singaporean state. But the Singaporean state leases flats to citizens at subsidized rates with long-term and low-interest loans. And then resale is allowed for citizens, but there are several policies to control resale prices.
So, taking into account all of this, we have reached three main proposals, one project and two recommendations that we make to the Hong Kong government. The first of which is the project that we will further analyze in depth later, is to build a polder in the Shenzhen base area, gaining 5 square kilometers, following the Netherlands model. In that area, there's going to be constructed a city that hosts 1 million inhabitants based on the Spain satellite cities model, which then those houses will be distributed using Singapore's price model. which will allow the government to make the prices at 25% more affordable on average.
Okay, and for our recommendation, the first of the recommendations is to encourage the government to release a little of the protected park area to increase supply in the short term, but for it not to lease the terrain at auction, which inflates terrain prices incredibly high, but rather set it at a fixed price and fixed rent prices for residents.
And our last recommendation is to continue with light housing because, as we have already seen, it's really efficient for short-term covering of the offer of the demand.
We have considered some of the results of that proposal. First of all, the polder can improve quality standard and increasing supply on the long term, so it's the one with most advantages. The second one, it has a bigger impact on the environment, so it's less effective. And in third place, the continued light housing can alleviate the short-term demand, solving the problem in a short period.
This is Shenzhen Bay. This is the area we have chosen to do the project. This is feasible technically because it has only 1.5 meters of depth. And it's a huge area where 1 million of people could live, and the government could take advantage about economies of scale. Moreover, it's 40 minutes to the center of Hong Kong by car, and we will advise to the government to build some highways and to connect Shenzhen Bay with the closest metro station.
Furthermore, it offers a great opportunity to connect Shenzhen and Hong Kong via metro, and also, if necessary, it can be extended in order to increase supply of housing, like in other different projects of polders in different areas in Hong Kong. As a result of that, here we have the spatial distribution of Shenzhen Bay City, divided in roads and paths, buildings, car park, and green areas. Also, the government will provide 1 million of inhabitants, public services and infrastructure.
Now it's time to quantify this project, so the total initial investment that the government should approve is $43 million US, which can be completely funded by Hong Kong fiscal reserve, which are substantial. So the 70%, I must highlight that it will be for residential buildings, and the rest one should be for public service like schools or parking, and also for green areas.
Going beyond in our quantitative analysis, there are expected operating costs per year of 516 million US. Nevertheless, the total annual revenue expected is around 4.74 billion US.
And our break-even point, which is actually a payback, tells us that on average by 2040, the government will have recovered its initial investment, leaving a profit each year on the government's funds.
And what about implementing decision on risks? Firstly, climate change risks like floods because of the increasing in sea level.
But we mitigate that by designing efficient and effective water pumping systems like the ones in Venice and the Netherlands.
Secondly, the lack of security in the new area because the new higher poverty.
But as we have already told, our project includes public services like police departments.
Thirdly, the lies on building construction phase because it's a complex project.
But there's a possibility that 1/3 of the total housing is built by modular buildings to shorten the construction phase times and mitigate also this problem once again.
So let's talk about the timeline of implementation. This project can start as soon as 2025, and the first step is to build the dike and to start draining the polder. By 2030, the polder can be drained and construction can start. By 2035, there should be enough housing for 500,000 people with its respected services.
Then by 2040, 1 million people will be able to access affordable housing thanks to subsidized rights, and by 2047, the one country, two systems model is expected to finish, so everything will be a bit uncertain. Thank you for your attention. We are expecting your questions, and we've provided also an appendix in our bibliography in the following slides.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we shall move to the Q&A section at 10 minutes. I start the question first again. Can you move back to the recommendation page? Yes, I'm wondering whether the numbers 5 km square is a correct number.
Which one?
Well,
Five square kilometers. That one.
yes.
Yeah. So the area of the dike, like the polder, we have calculated it, and with a program, it's 5 square kilometers, with the possibility, if it's later needed, to add up to like another 15 square kilometers to cover a future supply if it continues rising at this pace.
Well, but it comprises a very small area of Hong Kong, and for the entire Hong Kong, there are 7 or 8 million people resides here. So with just a small area, you can accommodate 1 million people. Am I correct?
Yeah, so what we took into account was, since it's a new city, we looked at some other projects from some other countries, and the one that was more interesting was the line from Saudi Arabia, which the population density is 270,000 per square kilometer, and we more or less did it the same, but with the accounting that most of the workers won't work there, so we have to make the metro line and the highways that are also added into the cost, but that's the population density that we took into account.
So that will be a very dense.
It will be very dense, yeah.
Okay. And my second question is about utilization of reserves and the initial investment. Yeah. Well, we have a total investment, initial investment of 42 billion, and then funded by the Hong Kong Reserve 94 billion. It's almost 40%, more than 40% of the reserves in Hong Kong. Would it be too aggressive?
Yeah, it can be, but these are the fiscal reserve. Hong Kong also have foreign reserve and other expenses, because Hong Kong spend a lot of money in housing every year, so it could be in the year budget, and this is one of the numbers, but the total initial investment should be divided in the 10 years of construction, so I think it's well. Thank
you. Because you guys went quickly to the last slides, I didn't get to the timeline for the development. Here, it seems that from the start of the project to the construction, after you drain the water and make it a dike, is it 5 years enough? Do you have some evidence to support this short time will be ready for the land to hold such big buildings, something like that?
Yeah, sorry, so you mean you're asking me if the land would be drained in 5 years?
Yeah,
yes.
And is everything well prepared for building? I mean.
Thank you. So the time estimation we used is based on Flevoland. Flevoland is this district of the Netherlands, and just this part is a plunder, just like the one we want to build. However, this one is much bigger. That one is 40,000 hectares, which is around 40 square kilometers. The building of the dike and the drainage of that part of the Netherlands took only 6 years in the 70s. So 50 years ago, it only took them 6 years. If we're optimistic with the new technology, not very optimistic at all, we believe we could do it for 5 square kilometers in only 5 years.
Another recent development in Hong Kong, the property price dropped by almost 25% compared to the peak in 2021. So do you think it is really the right time to propose this to the government, or would you consider any signal or triggering event that the government should be aware of when they really want to execute this plan?
Besides all of these things, I think that the population in Hong Kong in the next 22 years is going to increase by 700,000 of people. So if the current Hong Kong citizens are living in apartment of 14 meters, I think that if the population grows, we can do this project without any problem.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. We are prioritizing the population of Hong Kong instead of the economics of the real estate and the Hong Kong government.
Regarding to the size of your polder, I have a few information that would like to be given. Your polder is designated to build near Yuen Long, right? Yuen Long, there. The size, or like the size of Yuen Long district is like 100 something kilometer square, and then the people living in Yuen Long is only 0.6 million. So according to the whole size of Yuen Long only carries 0.6 million of people, but your 5 km square of land and you plan to live like near 100 million people, 1 million people. It may not be a feasible solution. And also about the transportation problem, I think these will be the difficulties that you need to face.
Yes, thank you. Well, actually, an interesting data of Hong Kong, as you know, 75% of it is protected parks, but of the 25% that is urbanized, out of the total Hong Kong territory, only 3.7% is highly density residential buildings, you know. So in those residential buildings, like the Keen Lung state, density is really high, and it's really difficult to dedicate that kind of density to land, territorial Hong Kong, because it's very accidentated, the geography. But this space will be very flat, so it's feasible for the density to be so high, to be as high as in those districts, but just much larger. And as for the transportation projects, as we have mentioned, we will include metro lines, which really descongestionize, and we really are betting for public transportation because it's much more efficient, especially than, for example, cars. We will, of course, have highways and cars and parking lots, but it's a lot more spatially efficient to transport people in public transportation than cars, and we are building metro lines, and it is included in the costs.
Okay, one question for me, that is, I don't think the location is a good one because it's close to the border between Shenzhen and Hong Kong. So I think if you need to launch this project, we need to have negotiation with Shenzhen government, because the project will affect the environment nearby. Do you understand what I mean? Because it's the bay, Shenzhen Bay, is not just owned by the Hong Kong government, but also part of it is owned by the Shenzhen government.
He means the corner is belongs to China.
Half of it is Hong Kong, half of it is China. So we need negotiation, so it will increase the level of difficulties on doing the project.
Like this is within Hong Kong's territory.
Yes. But because the construction will affect the environment of the Shenzhen Bay, so they will talk to us. You do something to affect the environment in the Shenzhen Bay. So
to make the bureaucracy easier with Shenzhen, as my teammate already said, it's possible that this satellite city also helps Shenzhen because the metro line could be able to connect Shenzhen and Hong Kong and make transportation between Hong Kong and Shenzhen much easier. So like the bureaucracy of it isn't as hard as just making it only beneficial for Hong Kong, but it also has benefits for Shenzhen, so that's why we thought of.
Okay, thank you very much. Time is up. And thank you for your presentation and the effort. And good luck. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Chinese Taipei, please be prepared.
Test 1, 2, 3.
Hello everyone, we're Team Taiwan. My name is Brian.
I'm Kingston.
I'm Judy.
I'm Anderson.
I'm Tiger. Today, as a consulting firm, we're going to construct a better housing market in Hong Kong. Now, imagine you're an ordinary office clerk with an annual salary of around 300,000 Hong Kong dollars per year. And you will have to essentially work for 30 years without food in order to simply purchase a single property, in which this reveals three main issues that are mitigated with the current Hong Kong housing market. As you can see on the graph on the middle, that there's a huge gap between the inflation of the property prices compared to the real wage growth index, which means that a lot of Hong Kong citizens are actually may not be available to afford those housing and may be forced into these caged homes that does not provide adequate housing services. In addition, even if you say that you prefer public housing, it's not all good news, given the fact that the average waiting time for public housing has increased threefold throughout the past decade. We can see that it could be partially attributed to the fact that there's around 250,000 applicants that are still currently waiting for this public government arrangement in regards to their flats, which in turn generates a huge problem in regards to the current Hong Kong housing market, that there's an excess demand of over 450,000 residential units that is required to be addressed, in which Kingston here is going to explain why this housing shortage occurs.
So, what might be the reason for these shortages? Well, we can apply the economic concept of supply and demand to explain this. Let's first discuss about demand, in which we're going to consider from the perspective of a low-income worker. By that, I mean I mean over 70,000 workers whose income are lower than $12,000 per month. Well, as seen on the right here, we can see that for them, since the private rent is 1.5 times more expensive than public rent, it is easy to see why the demand for public houses is much higher. However, they are not the only ones in demand. Next, we can see that the incumbent renters of public houses, knowing the rent difference, also prefers to stay in public houses rather than transitioning towards into a private house. So this means that from the demand side, we can see that due to the similarity of these two groups, the low-income group and the incumbent renters, we can see that there's a very high demand for public houses. Moreover, considering how those who cannot live in a public house will have to choose to live in a private house, its demand is also being pushed significantly high. Now, let's consider the supply side, in which we're going to use the government's perspective. Well, as seen here, it takes around 5 years to construct one public house and around 920,000 just to construct one single flat. What this means is that each housing unit takes a significant toll on the government. It is costly and it is time-consuming. Unfortunately, that very infamous virus that we call COVID-19 made the situation even worse. Right now, the government has to be very cautious over any extra deficit spending and has to make sure that every of its policies are very cost efficient. However, are its current policies actually cost efficient? Well, probably not. And Judy's here is going to explain why.
So there's currently two main policies the government implement as to housing market. The first is the carry assist policy that focuses on subsidy specific on individuals who want to purchase public housing. But additionally, there's a government goal of creating a housing of public to private ratio from 5 to 5 to 7 to 3. But additionally, the second policy is the rental reimbursement policy that focuses on subsidy for individuals who are forced into the private rental market and providing them more financial support. But the reason why both policy does not work in either cases is because it does not solve the core issue that there's already a lack of supply in public housing that are able for the average individual to afford in the housing market in Hong Kong. And therefore, aside from the cost-efficient government policy, we still need to deal with the main problem of a lack of supply. Then knowing these two problems, we can extend our view into the neighboring areas in Hong Kong, around Hong Kong. So in mainland China, there's actually similar model of capsule housing that provide individual short-run and long-run opportunity for living in, for example, flatland parks. But another opportunity for Hong Kong geographically is that there's a type of land called brownfield specifically. As shown on the graph on the right, the orange parts are the available brown lands within the Hong Kong housing market, and those lands are often the past agricultural land owned by government and now are used by illegally used by other individuals and are unplanned or unallocated by the government, which acts as a very important source of how we can improve and build up new supply of housing market, which includes over 760 hectares. So this links to our proposal of how we hope to create a capsule model for public housing. There's two parts within this model. The first is a capsule itself. So we hope to build 2-story high capsules that create 3 positive benefits. The first benefit is that it is very short term and it is very fast to proceed for immediate help for the supply of the Hong Kong market. It only needs under 1 month to construct one of the housing, but 2, it has a long lifespan and acts as a long-term solution of 50+ years lifespan. But lastly, it is very energy efficient and near zero energy cost, meaning that the government and renter does not need to put as much, does not have as much financial burden onto energy costs. And therefore, we hope to collaborate with local-based Hong Kong company of Cyber Texture and Alu House that already manufacturing those space capsule housing, along with prioritizing individuals who are currently already within the wait list. The second part is a rental system, so we hope to impose a proportional rental system for individuals living in those public housing of 40% of their income, which is far less than the market rate of private housing. And therefore, we also increase the amount of accountability of the government by building up a government subsector of accounting for individuals' monthly income and therefore ensuring that individuals' rent and income ratio are actually up to date and provide the government a cost-efficient model of revenue. So after this, Anderson is going to describe how we're going to implement our policies.
So here is our detailed implementation process to ensure success in the housing market. So from year 0 to 1, we're going to start with a freezing survey on these brownfields and ensure that we can take up all the property within 6 months. And then we'll start the rebuilding process through land destruction and also land preparing through bulldozing. And lastly, we're going to focus on transportation services and also increasing connectivity in the area. And from year 1, we're going to start our housing agency, which is a subunit under the Housing Authority and also Revenue Department. We're going to create a website in order to track the income of these people who rent these houses and match their rents to ensure the rent-to-income percentage is about 40%, so that the money we use to fund don't get drained. And next, for our plan from year 2 to year 6, we plan to build 100,000 units in order to increase the supply and hope to expand leftward to reach the goal of about 450,000 housing. Next, moving on to our quantitative analysis on our distribution of resources. So right now, Hong Kong has about 300 billion spent each year on construction projects, but we have access to 43 billion of them by repurposing them from public flat constructions. And if we look at the cost here, most funds will go towards the initial construction of community infrastructure and capitals. And next, moving on to the future outlook. So for our current cumulative revenue, we'll be able to break even by year 25 due to our rental income. But it's not just about profits, as the cost efficiency statistics are important. If we look at these two graphs, we can see that capsule housing is significantly cheaper and also less time consuming compared to original flats, which solve for the root cause of housing crisis. And this, in turns, will allow our GDP to increase by 18 billion in 5 years, and also at minimal increase 253,000 units supply, and also increase land development by 260 hectares. And now Tiger will be addressing our risks.
So we have identified some major risks along our proposal, but however, we have come up with plans to mitigate them. One of them might be asked like, is there any difficulties for government to reclaim those lands? Well, first we have to know, most of those brownfields in Hong Kong is actually illegal use and owned. But for our proposal to work smoothly, we may offer them to be listed on top of the waitlist to enjoy quality housing first. So let's walk through the whole proposal once again. So Hong Kong housing market is now facing a problem that is lacking supply of affordable housing. But we spot the opportunity of largely government-owned unused land. And we also spot the opportunity of domestic-based capital company. So we can be offering like both time and cost-efficient public housing project. To the citizens, we can avoid long wait lists, high prices, and cage houses. And for the government, we can also have better control over the living environment of our citizens. To a longer extent, we can also have a better housing market. We can attract foreign talents to strengthen the Hong Kong economy. Last, we will be encapsulating the Hong Kong housing market. We're Team Taiwan, and thank you for listening.
Oh, you just finished?
Yes.
Okay, that's good, that's good. Okay, thanks. And we shall start the Q&A time for 10 minutes. Let me ask the first question again. I see you mentioned about the brownfield land, and according to your plan, you are going to confiscate the land after 6 months, right? Have you ever tried to investigate why the Hong Kong government did not do so in the past decades?
Okay, thank you for the question. So in regards to the Hong Kong government policy in developing brown land, there's a current issue with these brownfield lands that might be because they originally want to develop them as a public housing projects and sort of that. However, there's a lot of controversies over these brownfield, given that most of them are scattered and not concentrated, so it makes it very hard to build like a lot of like huge apartments or flats over there. So therefore, our proposal can address this because most of these space capsule housing models rely on small, efficient space using that only occupies like 26 square meters per capsule, which makes it more efficient and more more available to account and fit into the different brownfield sites in comparison to its original projects.
Yeah, but if you can confiscate the land, it would be a solution, probable solution. But my question is, why the government were not able to confiscate the land over the past few decades? Have you investigated this?
Well, as you can see on the map here, that the government has in fact confiscated some part of the brownfield sites, around 41% or around 540 hectares of these brownfield sites are actually like already confiscated from these regions. However, these original lands are already planned for other governmental projects, for instance, like industrial areas or other purposes. So therefore, there's only around like 760 hectares that's available for our like public housing projects.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for your effort, Team Taiwan. But I think the most controversial part of the brownfield problem is about the identity of landlord in Hong Kong. I don't know, have you dig deep enough? Because most of the landlord of these brownfield are some so-called triad in Hong Kong. Okay, so it is difficult for government to negotiate with this landlord to collect their lands. So do you have any suggestion or do you have any recommendation?
Can you restate the problem again? So why does they can I can't hear the question quite clearly because.
Yeah, the brownfield land is basically heritage from the ancestor of the current occupants, and they are the current landlord. And in the past, due to political reasons, the government was not able to seize back the land lease. That was happened in the past. So and I understand that you have investigated that there are some lands that has been seized back recently, but they're quite scattered. So it's difficult to make a very big project within a short period of time. So that is our key question on this.
So after we have done some research, we found like there is actually a law that allow the Hong Kong government can actually like requisition those lands for public using. So I consider like those public housing projects will be a part of public usage. So we think we can negotiate with them because based on this law, so we can like requisition them. And I saw that like most of the Hong Kong's land is actually kind of owned by the government in some ways.
Thank you. We just talked about the brownfield site is the identification of the ownership and also how we can convince those landlords, the landowners. So some discuss the, in the form of a private-public partnership. You cooperate with those landlords and you share the profits from the property development. And you talk about the capsule in the brownfield. Seems to us is more like a short-term solution. And we just saw is the only strategy we have in the presentation. Do you have any other medium-term or long-term solutions to us?
So as previously mentioned in our proposal, that one of the main features why we chose the capsule housing is because of its both a good actor as both short and long term, because one housing can last more than 50 years, and we think that as it directly decreases the fixed cost of governments increasing, building new buildings, having this for 50 years is a direct long-term strategy that can be used by the government throughout years, given that it is very sustainable in its materials and the way it gains its energy.
If there's anything else to add, when it comes to long term, we also mentioned in our quantitative analysis that we can also add more features to the community and to make sure that the living standards around these areas are better. And so these can also be some more directions that we can focus on.
Okay, so can you move back to the picture, the capsule? Yeah, that's it. This one. Can it be built up a few story high, or just like that, occupying this piece of area?
Given the current existing models, as you can see on the image on the right, we know that there's currently only around like 2-decker of these apartments available. But given that there's like already Cybertecture and House as like Hong Kong headquartered company that are specializing in this space capsule housing projects, we believe that there could be future innovations given that most of the manufacturing materials are actually galvanized steel, which makes it actually pretty durable for like a lot of, for future more stories to be built on for this apartment. But however, like given that at the short term, we can only like sort of test out the existing models, we believe that we could develop like future, like more stories in the long run, but in the short run, we should use the existing model.
Hello, I'm two questions. I appreciate you have the page number. So page 9, please. Page 9. 9. First, I would like to ask, how can you get the data? Is that the private rent is 1.5 times than the expensive than public rents? Because for usually Hong Kong, for public housing, usually about 3,000 or 4,000 Hong Kong dollars. But if you really want to rent a flat in the urban area, you need about 10,000. So it's already low 1.5 times. And then for the second question, page 11, please. Yeah, the same question as other judge, I want to ask that this space capsule housing system is interesting, but these are low density properties. So how can you really can improve the situation? Because maybe you cannot settle many population into it. Yeah. Thank you.
So basically, this is like we first provide more supply in housing, so obviously like the prices are going to decrease, and there wouldn't be an increase in rent because it's capped through our proposal of percentages. We're capping it at 40%. So as your income rises, you also have to pay more. So there's not like an issue where like as people's income rises, the rent would increase for other people.
Wait, sorry, is your problem about like the housing density?
Maybe I rephrase my first question. The first question is, how can you get the data for page 9? Because usually Hong Kong, the rents difference shall not be 1.5 times difference, maybe about 3 or 4 times at least, because usually public housing just 3,000 per month. But for private housing, you at least 10,000 you can rent a flat. I think something data like this.
Oh, so we believe that the 1.5 times is like more of a more conservative estimation. Of course, maybe for some certain regions, yes, the rent difference can be even larger. But what we are trying to prove here is that because that the private rent is much higher than the public rent, it results in a huge demand for public houses, and that's what we're really trying to prove. Of course, like the rent difference for different regions, obviously some regions have more like demand, and that's going to be cost even more. Yeah, and for question 2, that is going to be.
Page 11, there's the low density capsule housing. So how can you improve the situation? Because you cannot settle many population.
One main concern, as previously stated, is that the government have limited budget and that it takes a long time for housing to high-story housing to be built. And the reason why we think that low density actually works in this case is after calculation, as a 2-story high capsule only occupies approximately 26 square meters, and we have estimated 720 hectares of land, and therefore we think that the density does not need to be the height of the building does not need to require to be high. The amount of capsule needed can be fit in within the large available land.
Sorry, I would like to give you a friendly reminder that the official name of your team is Team Chinese Taipei, and I don't want anyone to get into trouble by breaking the law. No offense, friend from Taiwan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Time is up. And thank you very much for your effort and contribution to this competition. Thanks.
Hello.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Freddie.
I'm Win.
I'm Joe.
And I'm Nathan, and welcome to Team UK's business case presentation.
The Hong Kong housing market is one of unaffordability and extremely high prices. In fact, the private housing price is approximately 30.1 times higher than median yearly income. In fact, Hong Kong has the highest house prices globally, approximately 2 times that of New York, which is known for having extremely high house prices. Couple this with a base interest rate of 5.75%, and it's no wonder that 46.3% of Hong Kong residents are living in public rental housing units, and 20% of Hong Kong residents are living in substandard housing units. You, the Hong Kong government, have a number of policies to address these issues. Firstly, you have planned and fully funded for 141,800 public rental housing units, with 242 billion Hong Kong dollars set aside for this project. This will not meet the increase in demand for public rental housing over the next 5 years, and therefore more is needed. On top of this, you have found that 410,000 public housing units could be built on brownfield sites throughout Hong Kong. However, these are not planned or funded for, and an additional 500,000 housing units could be built in the northern metropolis zone. However, this would require building in the green conservation zone and thus would not be sustainable. You have also established a task force to tackle substandard housing and are helping the renovation of these houses with initiatives such as Operation Building Bright 2.0.
Another prominent issue is the increasing levels of vacancy rate, as seen on the graph on the right. So in 2010, it started at 3%, and it steadily rose to 4.6% in 2024. Now, this essentially represents the number of houses that are vacant for over 6 months. So how would you feel if you were struggling to find a house, knowing loads of people are hoarding empty houses, hoping to flip them for higher prices? Now, this represents around 52,000 houses, which we think could accommodate 150,000 people. So, our solution to this is to implement a 5% tax rate. Now, has this worked before? Yes. In Vancouver, in 2017, they implemented a 3% tax rate. Now, this led to a 26% decrease in vacant units by 2020, and generated 100 million Canadian dollars, which is around 565 million Hong Kong dollars, which was reinvested into affordable initiative housing units. Now, how could this benefit Hong Kong? Well, we've calculated that this would generate around 19.6 billion Hong Kong dollars, which we would invest into our sustainable future.
A 6-year-long waiting time for 600,000 residents is something that we cannot allow to continue. With the current Hong Kong housing policy, People and residents need to have incomes over 5 times the income limit and assets over 100 times the asset limits before they are forced to vacate public houses. We believe that this is way too high, and when coupled with the affordability gap between public and private houses, this means that a lot of public houses are occupied by well-off tenants that are able to afford private houses but choose to stay in these government-provided houses simply because of the fact that they are cheaper. To combat this problem, we propose a 3-pronged solution. Firstly, we increase the punishment for incomplete information about your incomes and assets, and we provide harsher punishments if you lie about your incomes. We check incomes more frequently. Instead of 2 years, we check it once per 6 months. And then we also charge higher rental rates. Our revised rental rates will be this rate on the right here, where if your income is 100% over the upper limit, the rent increases proportionally to your income. Over 100%, we charge a 30% tax for every dollar increase in income. And if your income is over 3 times the upper limit, you would be forced to vacate the house. To tackle speculative buying, we also propose that the government should do a 40% sales tax on the purchase of a second house, a 50% limit of debt as a percentage of monthly income, a 50% tax if you rent your houses out within the first 5 years of purchase, and then a 70% tax if you sell your house within the first year of purchase. And this is all designed so that people only buy houses where they want to live in.
Our long-term initiative is an on-water community involving the construction of 3,000 floating apartment blocks and 48,000 rooms supported by buoyancy aids, projected to take only 4 years in construction. This first community in Tuen Mun will house 288,000 people, and the funding for the initiative is raised at $33.6 billion from tax revenue from the previous 2 policies. This community will be covered in solar panels to generate energy for daily necessities. You may be wondering, what will this initiative solve? Well, it will mitigate the current housing supply shortage, as residents currently living in areas of high demand and poor conditions can transfer directly to our on-water community. Why is Tuen Mun a suitable location for this floating community? Well, the existing infrastructure with residential facilities and recreational amenities surrounding the area provide convenience for the residents, while the accessibility and transport with connecting ferry and bus systems to areas of Hong Kong such as Central mean that the labour force can remain uninterrupted. And finally, how does this policy meet our environmental targets and show clear signs of sustainability? Well, the minimal land impact with our unused current site means that this project is perfect for this area. The potential for renewable energy, such as solar energy, means we can move forward closer to reaching our target of carbon neutrality by 2050. And finally, we can enhance biodiversity and marine life by maintaining reefs and habitats to enhance local biodiversity.
If you're wondering what the cost of this initiative would be, we have this pie chart shows all the cost composition of the project, and we project that an initial 3,000 apartments will cost an approximate 91.4 billion Hong Kong dollars. This is broken down into 4 parts, with construction taking up most of our proportion, and we calculated this by finding the average construction price per square foot of apartments in Hong Kong. Important thing to note here is the cost of the floating infrastructure itself, because this is a new infrastructure that's never been done before. How we calculated the cost for this floating infrastructure was we found the actual cost of the equipment, of hiring the labor, and we also found the additional cost of when Hong Kong builds and develops new innovative projects. So that additional cost, for example, when Hong Kong developed a smart city or tried to, we found the additional cost associated with a new project and included that in our floating infrastructure. We also benchmarked it against floating apartments in UK and Amsterdam, and we found that the costs were relatively close to what we calculated when we applied the purchasing power parity, which gave us a total of 14 billion Hong Kong dollars. On the right here, this shows our Monte Carlo simulation, which basically we entered the standard deviation of cost for each of our costs. And we ran 100,000 simulations to find what our worst case costs would be. That ended up being around $140 billion, which even in our worst case revenue, we would still break even in approximately 7 years.
In order to ensure the continued sustainability of this project, it is imperative that every single apartment is fully covered in solar panels. Given the average solar irradiance per square meter in Hong Kong and the size of the roofs of each of these apartments, one apartment block will generate 1,152 kilowatt hours of energy per day. Given the average Hong Kong resident consumes 10 kilowatt hours of energy per day, this means each apartment will consume 960 kilowatt hours of energy per day, meaning each apartment will generate a surplus of 192 kilowatt hours of energy per day of exportable green energy. This will be a total of 3,456,000 kilowatts of energy per day, which will be the equivalent of 1,728,000 kilograms of carbon not entering the atmosphere from these apartments, an additional 576,000 kilograms of carbon not entering the atmosphere per day from the exportable green energy, which is the equivalent of the yearly carbon output of 1,653 cars.
On to our revenue. Best case scenario, we earn around 45.7 billion Hong Kong dollars a year from our mainstream revenue, and worst case, still a large 23 billion. So with our additional and main revenue stream, we would earn around 33.6 billion as the median. And we also save around 2.3 billion from our sustainable energy per year. Thank you for listening. We'd like to open the floor to questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, let us start the Q&A section now. Regarding the floating community in Tuen Mun, I'm wondering who is the target user, and also is that a temporary or permanent setting?
So the main target for us right now is we're going to provide these houses to the people who've been on the waiting list for the longest time. So it's going to be a factor of being on the waiting list for the longest time, and also the people who are currently living in the most bad situations. And once they get into these houses, this will be more or less a temporary solution, like for example 10 years, and if their income increases in those 10 years, where their income goes over the limit, then they would move out and we would give it to people in more critical conditions.
My another question is regarding the vacancy tax as well as other measures that may probably dampen the property price. You've mentioned that 45% of the people are living in the public housing, while the other 55% are living in the private housing, right? So most of the 55% people have only one property, one property. And I just mentioned earlier, the property price peaked at 2021, and by now it's dropped by 25%. So again, my question is, when do you think you should initiate this initiative? And probably now it may not be the right time, but what criteria when you see you will initiate these initiatives?
So we were planning to initiate this as soon as possible to help increase our funds for the sustainable floating island. So within the next couple of years would hopefully be our goal to raise the funds, and it would be a fantastic short-term goal to implement.
Yeah, the problem about 55 owning only one house, since it's a vacancy tax, we'll only be charging the tax on people who either have a second house which they don't use, and we just think we should tax them for that reason.
Okay, I have another question. That is, if you are going to see a downturn in property market, that means the here we see a drop in price and also a reduction in the vacancy rate. So will you adjust your proposal?
I think even if prices are already decreasing and vacancy rates are already decreasing, since currently the housing market is still in a crisis, I think by the time we will still implement this, even if the vacancy rate is, wait, isn't it going up? Yeah. Wait, the vacancy rate is actually going up per year. It's not going down. The prices are going down, but the vacancy rate's going up.
Also, the 1 year revenue from the vacancy rate would generate the money to build the floating infrastructure project.
Hello. Thanks for the effort of trying to know about the situation of Hong Kong. And then it's interesting that you chose Twin Moon to build up the water community. But as I remember, I want to know some more data about your suggestion. That is, how many, or I say how large the land, or how large the area that you want to build up the community that you haven't mentioned, and also how many population you think you can accommodate them there.
Can you say that again one more time for me, please?
Okay, this one. Yeah, with this. How large is the area, and then how many population you can accommodate?
All right, so what the apartment would look like is it's a 2-floor apartment, and each floor will have 8 rooms. Each floor will have 8 rooms, and then each floor will be approximately 250 square feet. So this will be 2 floors, and each room can accommodate about 6 people. So then in total, we will build 3,000 apartments. So this will give us a total of around 300,000 residents.
Okay, my concern still goes to the taxation you proposed. Can you go back to the slides? I forgot it. About the Vancouver case analysis, the successful case for the vacancy analysis. Yeah, here. So you introduce a successful case. Have you considered, because I'm still worried about the feasibility to implement such a strict taxation now. So my question is, have you considered the situation back to 2017 in Vancouver and to compare it with the current situation in Hong Kong? Is it a good time to implement such a system or mechanism?
Yes, so this has also been implemented in several other countries, including Netherlands, which is slightly more recent. And we believe that this would be the perfect time to do it, as the problem is only getting worse. So the quicker we implement this system, the quicker we can fix the vacancy rate, because we believe that this is a large proportion of people that should be accounted for.
We also believe the opportunity cost of not doing the vacancy tax now to be greater than the opportunity cost of the perhaps increase in private property rents, as we are able to build the on-water community for more public rental housing units.
Okay, suppose we take this vacancy tax into consideration. How exactly can you charge those flat owners? How can we identify?
So this is the policy that we, so basically, if you are vacant from your accommodation for over 6 months, then you are affected by this, and there would be people that would, you have tax collection that would collect it annually.
I have many houses. I live in this house for 2 days, and then I live in another house. So how can we actually convince those, just find out those guys?
Good question. So as part of our policy, you need to be a resident of that for at least 1 of the 6 months in order to meet the criteria of not being taxed. Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay, if not, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, last team to go.
May we start? Hello, dear listeners. We are Team Russia, and today we will be presenting you with our solution to the business case. First of all, we would like to give you an executive summary of the things that we worked on. To start with, we identified 3 of the main problems. They are high property prices, long waiting time for public housing, and low quality of existing houses. Then we analyzed the existing policies aimed at tackling the crisis that are being implemented both in Hong Kong and other regions of the world. Then, based on the policies that we have analyzed, we proposed our own solutions that are to modify the tax and mortgage systems and to drain the junk bay.
We did the analysis and found out that Hong Kong housing problem is caused by 4 major problems. The first one being limited land supply due to mountainous landscape. The second one is speculation on investment. The third one is a high number of unoccupied properties. And the final one is high level of income inequality with a Gini coefficient of 0.54. As you can see on the right, these 4 issues cause some major problems. The first one being the increasing waiting time for houses, which achieved 6.3 years in 2023. Additionally, the prices for housing have been constantly growing since 2007, and this is especially relevant for low-end houses, where these prices grew more than 4 times since 2007, making Hong Kong housing the least affordable housing in the world for the last 11 years. One more problem that Hong Kong faces is the problem of poor living condition, including extremely limited space per person, which is only 15 square meters per person on average. Additionally, the amount of homeless people in 2023 grew by more than 30%, and more than 200,000 people live in so-called coffin houses, dwellings with the area of less than 2.3 square meters. Analyzing our other stakeholders, we analyzed government, which faces the problem of high inequality and lower morale due to housing crisis, and construction firms that face a problem of lower profits, and other firms that face a problem of higher costs. To clarify the data, we went to the real estate firm and found out that these problems are especially relevant, and in our solutions we aim to address them.
The Hong Kong government has already implemented a range of policies and legislation in order to tackle the ongoing housing crisis. However, our analysis reveals that most of policies, while yet being partially efficient, have not reached the desired outcomes. By our analysis, which evaluated key 3 criteria, being square meter per person, the total number of person covered potentially, and cost of policy in Hong Kong dollars, reveal that the most effective policies now are long-term housing strategies and public partnerships. However, they still need to be improved. In response, Hong Kong government proposed 3 new initiatives. The first one is Landau Tomorrow Vision, which aims at the creation of artificial islands in order to increase the land supply. The second one is so-called MIC, which will increase productivity by 2 times and reduce the speed and reduce the time and cost of buildings by 40%. And the last one is Northern Metropolis Strategic Development, which proposes building new business and living infrastructure in the northern territories of Hong Kong. However, as we've analyzed, the potential effectiveness might be low, and therefore there is an extreme need in cutting-edge and innovative solutions.
Then we analyzed successful solutions for housing problem in other cities. Firstly, Singapore has implemented additional buyer stamp duty that increased tax on foreign buyers to 60% to mitigate the effect of foreign wealth on local housing prices. The next solution is Macau's restrictions on for 5 years on buying property for 5 years after acquiring public housing, and the next example is pendulum migration that involves developing residential areas in cost-efficient locations and establishing efficient transportation to the central city, like in São Paulo and Campinas in Brazil. That way people will be in touch with the city, but housing costs will be reduced. And finally, from the 17th century, the Netherlands is developing dams and technologies to reclaim land from the Lake IJsselmeer. And the biggest project is the island of Flevoland that now accommodates 420,000 people.
So as for our first solution, we want to create a new system of incentives for people. So for example, we want to make landlords and developers rent their vacant properties out, and also we want to make tenants to move to underpopulated regions. We want to implement taxes on those homeowners who have more than one house that is not rented by anyone and or not occupied, and also on developers whose properties is neither sold nor used. To settle new regions faster, we want to build houses there, of course, and improve the infrastructure. In accordance with decreased mortgage rates for flats on those islands, the housing will become much more affordable. So basically what we are doing is creating a new incentive system so people move from overcrowded regions from Hong Kong to new areas. And as you can see on the graph to your left, to your right, sorry, this will reduce prices in the region. And our second initiative is to build up a dam in the Junk Bay nearby the Hong Kong city and drain the water out of the new piece of land and create a new affordable housing area right there. The depth of waters there is just around 6 to 10 meters. The width of the bay is around 2.2 kilometers. The ground soils are suitable for construction, and also there aren't any actual major trading hubs. So this makes all of the above makes our project actually feasible. Those new stories houses will become a new home for around 200,000 people, and that will quickly address the problem of long waiting times that is currently existing. Of course, there are some cons that we can face with, such as ecological problems or traffic jams, but we will implement more policies to address them. So actually, we'll have the absence of businesses and working areas there, but the goal is to accommodate people and to provide high level of public transportation so their living conditions dramatically improve.
Lastly, we created a financial model to prove the relevance of our solutions. You can use this QR code to find our in-depth calculations, but in brief, the total cost of dam construction would be around $400 million US dollars, and $67 million would be the environmental expenses. The total revenue from taxes would be around 50 billion US dollars over the time span of 10 years, and the lost benefits from new mortgage policy would be around 70 billion US dollars. So in the end, we would lose around 19 billion US dollars. However, at the same time, we would accommodate around 1 million people on the uninhabited areas. So we will become 2.5 times more cost efficient in comparison with the artificial island So the main idea of our presentation is that the situation can be tackled. However, we need to take action as soon as possible. We believe that Hong Kong embarks on the new journey from stability to prosperity, and we hope that we will help it to achieve sustainable growth. Thank you very much for your attention. Now we would gladly answer all your questions.
Oh, thank you very much, and just in time. Okay, let me ask my first question. Regarding your solutions proposed, how many people are you addressing their needs? It's about less than 1 million, right?
So in the new area in the Jiang Bay, we plan to accommodate around 200,000 people. That's the maximum capacity. How we calculated that? So we calculated that the area that we will build the houses on is around 4.2 square kilometers. Then we took the density of the population in the Kowloon area, that is the most dense in the Hong Kong, and we just multiplied numbers. So why that works? The reason is because in that area we will basically have multi-stories houses without lots of working spaces, without any factories, without huge highways. So people will just live there, and it will be pretty dense, but that's the goal.
I think it's workable for 200,000 people. But I see in another page you're talking about 990, yes?
So basically, the other 800,000 people will be accommodated in some other underpopulated areas around Hong Kong, on some other islands. And the calculations are for all the people, for the sake of sustainability.
Oh. So does it cover those area project proposed by the Hong Kong government, say Northern Metropolis and other land reclamation area? Does this cover that?
We did into account that Hong Kong cutting-edge initiatives will be realized in the future. However, most of our calculations were precisely based only on our solutions because of the heart of calculation, the effectiveness of the North Syrian strategic development, and also Lantau Tomorrow Vision, because this is they are very future perspective projects, and we propose that we need to tackle the crisis as soon as possible, and our solutions suppose that it will be tackled in 10 years. So therefore, about 800,000 people will relocate from the most dense part in Hong Kong main city to the underpopulated areas through the system of stimulus and initiatives which were mentioned later.
Yeah, my question is, we are now staying at Zhenbei, this area. Did you hear the previous group, they say maybe they choose Yunnan or Tuen Mun as other place that they can build the water community, or say reclaim the land. So why do your team choose Zhenbei? Any reason for it?
The reason why Zhenbei was chosen is this: before the depth is about 6 meters, as been told, and the potential landscape will be the most effective and the most convenient one for building districts, and moreover the location of Zhenbei is very suitable for these projects, as it's very close to the most vibrant part of Hong Kong, and the infrastructure system will be easy to build and moderate, and moreover the ecology situation, mostly there are no huge trading hubs there, and the ecology situation suppose that there will no much environmental damage by this concrete project.
So you claim that people will move in, right, within 10 years. Do you have a very solid proof to show us that this project can be finished within 10 years? It's not only about how they move in, about all each step of this construction.
As we have done research, we found out that the same projects in China or in Netherlands, even bigger dams take less than 5 years, usually more often about 3 years. So for sure we will build the dam in around 2 years, because it's just 2 kilometers. And to drain the water out, it will not take a lot of time. And after that, we'll start the construction. And as we have multi-story low-end houses, it will not be too hard too time-consuming to build them. And also, simultaneously, we work in other directions. We still work with programs that my colleague Anton talked about, so people will have new houses to live in.
It seems this addressed the short or medium-term demand. Seems I remember you mentioned about the Northern Metropolis and also the Lantau recommendation project, right? I think they are more long-term arrangement, but it involves a lot of cost and time and effort. Do you think the government really need to do both projects, or only one project? And if so, why or why not?
So we consider that government should implement both projects, even though our project is more cost efficient. Our project is definitely successful in the short run, and the second idea about incentives, it will help us in the long run. And talking about the island, this project will happen quite later. So the dam we can build slightly faster than the artificial island, and thus if we do these projects one by one, they should work simultaneously pretty well.
But given the size of these two projects are huge, and we are recently having the deficit, and although we have quite a big reserves in our books, so do you think that is very dangerous to do both projects, or should we involve whatever private or private sector to help us, or raise additional fund? How would you consider we should raise enough fund to finance the two projects?
So as a financier of our team, I have to say that the Lantau Tomorrow Vision is indeed a very costly project in comparison to the Northern Metropolis even. So personally, I would first implement the Northern Metropolis project because they are expected to attract nearly the same amount of people. However, the second one is less costly, and potentially instead of the Lantau Tomorrow Vision, they could use our project because it once again would be more cost efficient, 2.5 times more efficient. And even though it would attract less people, as Daria has already mentioned, in the short run, it would help us tackle some of the minor problems. So to start with, we would implement the Northern Metropolis project and our idea, and then in the long run, we could use the Lantau Tomorrow Vision.
How about financing?
Huh?
Financing. What kind of source of financing you may propose the Hong Kong government to use for those two long-term projects?
Sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Okay. We need funds to finance the two projects. We have deficits and we have reserves, but may not be enough to solely operate the two projects by our own funds. So what kind of financing would you suggest?
So basically, first of all, Hong Kong has its fiscal reserves, some of which may be allocated to the dam construction. And as for the taxation and mortgage policies, we could motivate other firms and other companies to buy our new land on the new in the new area, and we could use this money gained from these firms to cover the costs.
Okay.
Thank you
very much. Thank you. Thanks for your effort.
And please do give a big round of applause to the honorable judges who stayed with us for almost 12 hours today. And congratulations to all teams who made the finals. So the announcements for tomorrow's has been sent out. Please read the announcements for tomorrow. The buses will arrive at the gate in 10 minutes, so take your time, go to the toilet, and go down for the buses. Thank you very much. See you later.
我未計分啊！我費事，唔好意思，即係個個都問好多時間。
係啊，我都係，所以上去攞翻。拜拜拜拜。係啊，你快走下。再見再見。哦，拜拜拜拜拜拜。拜拜拜拜，辛苦晒大家嚇。